In the vast expanse of history, some journeys were never meant to be completed. They began with ambition, fueled by curiosity and the promise of discovery, but instead they spiraled into enigma, tragedy, and silence. What happens when explorers vanish without a trace, when entire crews are found but their fate remains unknown, and when the harshest frontiers become the last resting place for the brave? These aren't mere stories of failure. They are haunting tales etched into the fabric of our world, echoes of madness, desperation, and the thin line between human endurance and oblivion. What unseen forces, harsh environments, or unknown circumstances conspired to erase these expeditions from history? Tonight, we peel back the veil on these strange and unsolved journeys, where every answer only deepens the mystery. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in to uncover the chilling truths behind the expeditions that ended in madness, disappearance, and death. The dense canopy of the Amazon rainforest stretches endlessly, a vast ocean of green where sunlight struggles to pierce the thick, humid air. Towering trees, twisted vines, and the distant calls of unseen creatures create an environment both breathtaking and impenetrable. This is the domain where one of the 20th century's most enduring mysteries unfolded, a mystery of ambition, obsession, and disappearance. It is here, deep in the heart of the South American jungle, that British explorer Percy Fawcett vanished without a trace, leaving behind a puzzle that continues to confound historians, adventurers, and scholars alike. Fawcett was no ordinary explorer. A seasoned soldier, cartographer, and geographer, he was captivated by tales of lost civilizations and the promise of undiscovered cities hidden beneath the forest's relentless growth. His fascination was sparked by indigenous legends of Z, a supposed ancient city of gold and great knowledge buried somewhere beyond the known boundaries of Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru. Over years of expeditions, Fawcett meticulously mapped uncharted territories, yet his final journey in 1925 was different. He set out with his eldest son and a trusted companion, determined to find this elusive city, never to return. What do we know for certain? Fawcett's last communication was a brief letter sent from a remote outpost. After that, silence. No verified sightings, no recovered artifacts, no definitive clues to their fate. The vast jungle, with all its dangers, hostile tribes, disease, treacherous terrain, has swallowed the answers whole. Early rescue missions found abandoned camps and scattered equipment, but no survivors. Speculation emerged quickly. Did they fall victim to the unforgiving wilderness? Were they attacked by local tribes? Or did they simply succumb to starvation or illness, lost to the impenetrable wild? Yet these straightforward explanations only scratch the surface. Over decades, other theories have taken root, some grounded in fact, others veering toward the speculative. Some suggest that Fawcett may have been taken in by a native tribe, living out his days far from civilization, perhaps even assimilated into their culture. Could he have found the city of Z after all, choosing to remain hidden rather than returning to a world that had doubted him? Reports surfaced sporadically of white men seen deep in the jungle, but none have been conclusively linked to Fawcett. More controversial claims arise from supposed secret journals and accounts that hint at encounters with ancient tribes guarding powerful knowledge, or even hints at supernatural forces protecting the lost city. While there is no evidence to confirm such ideas, they reveal the enduring allure and mystery that surround Fawcett's disappearance. What was it about the jungle, about the myths he chased, that captured his imagination so fully? And what price did he pay for that obsession? Fawcett's story challenges our understanding of exploration itself. It forces us to confront the limits of human endurance against nature's indifferent vastness. It raises difficult questions about ambition, belief, and the thin line between discovery and obsession. Was Fawcett a visionary ahead of his time, or was he blinded by myth? And if Z exists, what secrets does it hold? Secrets that may forever remain buried beneath centuries of foliage and silence. As the Amazon continues to thrive, undisturbed and inscrutable, Fawcett's fate remains one of history's most compelling enigmas. The jungle, in its endless mystery, guards its secrets well. And so, the question lingers. What truly happened to Percy Fawcett and his expedition? Does the lost city await rediscovery, or is it destined to remain a phantom of the past, a symbol of the ultimate journey into the unknown? As the dense canopy of the Amazon gradually fades into the depths of memory, we shift from the impenetrable jungle to a vast and open expanse, a boundless stretch of ocean where another enigma quietly waits beneath the waves and beyond the horizon. Unlike the whispered secrets of the rainforest, the mystery of the sea has long been a stage for tales of ships lost, found, and forever altered by the forces of nature and human fate. Among these, one story stands out: a vessel discovered adrift, perfectly intact, but devoid of its crew. This is the tale of the Mary Celeste. Picture the vast Atlantic Ocean in late 1872. The air is crisp with salt and mist, waves rolling gently under a gray sky. There, bobbing quietly in the endless blue, was a merchant brigantine that had become the embodiment of one of maritime history's most perplexing riddles. The Mary Celeste was found by the crew of the Dei Gratia, a Canadian ship bound for the Mediterranean. What they saw was astonishing. The Mary Celeste was afloat and seaworthy, her sails still hoisted, cargo intact, personal belongings undisturbed. But there was no sign of the people who had been aboard. The ship's log, papers, and navigational instruments were all present, except for a few hours of log entries missing in the final days. The lifeboat was gone, vanished from the deck, and some water had leaked into the hold. Yet no bodies, no struggle, no trace of violence or piracy. It was as if the crew had stepped off the ship, never to return. Who were these vanished souls, and what compelled them to leave a seaworthy ship in the middle of the Atlantic? This question has been asked countless times, and over the decades, many theories have surfaced, each striving to piece together the puzzle left behind on the calm waters. The most conventional explanations begin with natural phenomena. Perhaps a sudden storm or waterspout terrified the crew, forcing them to abandon ship temporarily in the lifeboat. But if this were true, why were their belongings left behind? Why did they not return to the Mary Celeste, especially when the ship was still afloat and sound? Could the cargo, mainly barrels of industrial alcohol, have leaked fumes that caused fear of an explosion, prompting a hurried evacuation? Other hypotheses suggest the possibility of a mutiny, piracy, or an attack. Yet the ship bore no signs of violence or theft, and no evidence was ever found to support these claims. Even more curious was the condition of the ship's captain, Benjamin Briggs, a man known for his prudence and discipline, who had sailed these waters many times before without incident. But the intrigue deepens when we consider more speculative or fringe theories, ideas that cannot be proven yet persist in the collective imagination. Some have wondered if paranormal forces played a role: ghost ships, supernatural abductions, or eerie phenomena that compelled the crew to abandon their vessel in fear. Others have speculated on the possibility of secret cargo, smuggling, or covert activities that led the crew to vanish, intentionally disappearing into the folds of maritime lore. In the realm of science, modern hypotheses have introduced the idea of a sudden release of methane gas from the ocean floor, creating a bubble that could have disrupted the ship's buoyancy and created a hazardous atmosphere, enough to force the crew to abandon ship in haste. While this remains largely theoretical, it offers a tantalizing explanation rooted in natural forces still not fully understood. Yet, Despite extensive investigations, the fate of the Mary Celeste's crew remains a mystery. No survivors, no definitive clues, no conclusive evidence to rewrite the narrative with certainty. The ship's story continues to captivate, inviting us to ponder the fragile balance between human courage and nature's unpredictability. What does the silent drift of the Mary Celeste teach us about the unknown? About the thin veil separating order from chaos on the open sea? And beneath the waves and endless skies, what secrets remain locked away, waiting for the next curious mind to search, to question, and perhaps to find an answer? The Mary Celeste floats in the collective imagination, a haunting symbol of disappearance and unresolved fate. It reminds us that, even in the age of technology and exploration, some mysteries refuse to yield their truths, lingering like shadows on the horizon, inviting us to wonder what lies beyond the known. From the endless, sun-scorched deserts of Australia, we now shift our gaze to the soaring heights of the Himalayas, where the sky thins, the air grows thin, and the earth touches the heavens. Here, amidst jagged ice cliffs and swirling mists, lies one of the most captivating enigmas in the history of exploration. The mystery of George Mallory, and the question that has haunted mountaineers and historians alike. Did he summit Everest before his final, fatal climb? Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, has long been a symbol of human ambition, endurance, and the desire to conquer the impossible. Its sheer cliffs, treacherous crevasses, and bone-chilling winds present challenges that test even the most experienced climbers. In 1924, two men set out into this forbidding realm, seeking to plant their flag at the very summit. George Mallory, a seasoned British mountaineer with a quiet determination, and his climbing partner, Andrew "Sandy" Irvine, embarked on a journey that would become the stuff of legend and profound mystery. The story begins on the rugged slopes of the world's tallest peak, a landscape both awe-inspiring and merciless. Snow and ice stretch endlessly in every direction, interrupted only by the jagged rocks that punctuate the upper reaches. The air is thin, with less than a third of the oxygen found at sea level, making every breath a struggle. Visibility can vanish in moments, swallowed by sudden storms or shifting clouds. In such a place, survival is never guaranteed. Mallory and Irvine's attempt in 1924 was their second and final expedition. The two men were last seen by their teammate, Noel Odell, at a perilous point high on the mountain, known as the Second Step, roughly 800 vertical feet from the summit. Odell reported seeing them moving upwards through a break in the clouds, but they were never seen alive again. What happened next is a question that has sparked decades of speculation, research, and debate. Did Mallory and Irvine manage to reach the summit, perhaps hours or even days before they perished? Or were they forced to turn back, victims of the mountain's unforgiving grip? For years, the mystery lay dormant, buried beneath layers of ice and snow. Then, in 1999, an extraordinary discovery stirred the climbing world and reignited the debate. Mallory's body was found on the north face of Everest, preserved in the frigid air, lying at an altitude of approximately 26,760 feet. His position suggested a fall, but many details remained puzzling. His camera, the key to potentially confirming whether he reached the summit, was missing. Mallory's body bore no definitive signs that would confirm a successful ascent, yet the presence of a photo of his wife sewn inside his jacket hinted at his personal motivations, a poignant reminder of the human story beneath the legend. The camera, however, which could have held photographic proof, was never recovered. Without it, the question remains tantalizingly open. Historical records and Mallory's own writings reveal a man deeply committed to the quest. His careful planning, physical conditioning, and pioneering climbing techniques suggest he was prepared for such a feat. Yet, the technology and knowledge available in 1924 were limited. Oxygen equipment was rudimentary, weather forecasting primitive, and climbing gear far less advanced than today's standards. Was it possible for Mallory and Irvine to overcome these obstacles and reach the summit, or were they overwhelmed by nature's challenges? Climbing experts and historians are divided. Some argue that the absence of Mallory's body at the summit or any other evidence left behind, such as a camera or climbing equipment, makes a successful ascent unlikely. Others point to eyewitness accounts, the detailed knowledge Mallory demonstrated about the route, and the possibility that Irvine, skilled in mechanical repair, may have managed the oxygen apparatus effectively, enabling them to push higher than previously thought. More speculative theories delve into alternative possibilities. Could the two men have survived longer than believed, only to be lost on the descent? Did a sudden storm claim them, or did they fall victim to hidden crevasses or avalanches? Some even suggest that Mallory might have encountered indigenous climbers or other explorers, their paths crossing in the silent mountain air. The discovery of Mallory's body has added layers to the mystery, with forensic analyses providing insights but no definitive answers. Injuries suggest a fall, but the exact circumstances remain unclear. Meanwhile, Irvine's remains have yet to be found, deepening the enigma and fueling further expeditions and searches. Everest itself guards its secrets fiercely. The mountain changes with the seasons, shifting ice and rock moving the landscape and sometimes revealing or concealing clues. Each year, climbers brave its slopes, some paying the ultimate price, reminding us of the mountain's merciless nature and the high cost of human ambition. This mystery also invites reflection on the nature of exploration, the tension between human determination and the forces of the natural world. Mallory's quest was not just about reaching the summit, but about pushing the limits of what was thought possible at the time. His story embodies both the triumphs and tragedies inherent in such pursuits. Moreover, the mystery resonates on a deeper, more human level. It speaks of courage and hope, of a man driven by love and the desire to leave a mark on history. The image of Mallory clutching the photograph of his wife in his final moments is a powerful reminder that behind every great expedition lie personal stories of sacrifice and longing. Today, the question remains: did George Mallory and Andrew Irvine stand on the summit of Everest nearly 3 decades before Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay's confirmed ascent in 1953? Without the camera's film or further conclusive evidence, the answer eludes us. As we peer into the thin, icy air of the world's highest peak, we are reminded that some mysteries persist not because we lack effort, but because the very nature of exploration is to confront the unknown. What stories lie buried beneath the snow and ice? What truths will future climbers uncover? Mallory's mystery is a timeless echo from the heights, calling us to wonder, to search, and to respect the mountain's majesty and peril. It is a reminder that in the pursuit of greatness, sometimes the journey itself, fraught with uncertainty and risk, becomes the most enduring legacy. What remains hidden on Everest's silent slopes? And will the next discovery finally reveal whether Mallory truly stood atop the world? From the sun-scorched ruins of ancient civilizations to the relentless winds that shape the earth, deserts have long been a crucible of mystery and endurance. They hold secrets buried beneath their shifting sands, places where human footsteps are swallowed and stories are left untold. Among these enigmatic landscapes is China's Lop Nor Desert, a sprawling, desolate expanse of salt flats, sand dunes, and cracked earth. It is here, in one of the most inhospitable places on the planet, that the story of Peng Jiamu unfolds, a tale of exploration, disappearance, and enduring mystery. The Lop Nor Desert lies in the remote reaches of China's Xinjiang region. Once a vast lake, the area has long since dried, leaving behind a labyrinth of salt marshes, shimmering mirages, and treacherous terrain. The region is notorious for its extreme temperatures, scorching heat by day, bitter cold by night. and a barren silence that stretches unbroken for miles. It is a landscape that tests the limits of human endurance and will. Peng Jiamu was not an ordinary traveler. A distinguished Chinese biochemist and explorer, he dedicated much of his life to scientific research and desert expeditions. His work was groundbreaking, combining field exploration with cutting-edge biology. He ventured into Lop Nor repeatedly, studying its unique ecosystem and searching for clues about life in one of Earth's harshest environments. But in 1980, during one such expedition, Peng disappeared without a trace, vanishing into the desert's unforgiving vastness. What we know is both sparse and haunting. Peng was last seen on March 17, 1980, setting off on a solo journey to collect water samples from a remote location. His plan was to be gone only a few hours, but he never returned. Initial search efforts were extensive but yielded nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no remains. Nothing to explain what had happened to the experienced scientist who knew the desert's dangers well. The official investigations proposed several plausible scenarios. Perhaps Peng became disoriented and succumbed to dehydration or heat exhaustion. Maybe he fell into a concealed crevice or was caught in one of the desert's sudden, violent sandstorms. Some suggested an accident, others natural causes. Yet none of these explanations provide a satisfying answer, especially given his expertise and familiarity with the terrain. More speculative theories soon surfaced, adding layers to the mystery. Some locals whispered of supernatural forces said to inhabit the desert, spirits guarding ancient secrets or cursed lands where trespassers disappear. Others considered the possibility of secret government activity in the region. Lop Nor had been used as a testing site for nuclear weapons and missile launches during the Cold War. Could Peng have stumbled upon classified areas or witnessed something that placed him in danger? Another theory considers the psychological toll of extreme isolation. Could Peng have experienced a sudden mental breakdown brought on by the solitude and harsh conditions, leading him to wander deeper into the desert? Or was there a voluntary disappearance? Was the scientist seeking escape from an unknown pressure, choosing to vanish intentionally? While intriguing, these ideas remain speculative and unsubstantiated. In the decades since Peng's disappearance, numerous expeditions have tried to retrace his steps, using modern technology to scan and search the vast desert. Satellite imaging, drones, and ground-penetrating radar have all been employed, yet the desert continues to guard its secrets. Peng's fate remains one of China's most baffling disappearances, an unsolved riddle that fascinates both scientific communities and mystery seekers worldwide. His story raises profound questions about the nature of exploration and the limits of human knowledge. How can a man so well prepared and experienced simply vanish, leaving no trace behind? What does this say about the deserts and wild places that still defy understanding, even in an age of satellites and global positioning? Lop Nor itself is emblematic of the thin boundary between the known and the unknown, a place where ancient history meets modern science, where life struggles against the odds, and where human presence is fragile and fleeting. It challenges our assumptions about control and safety, reminding us that even the most diligent preparations cannot guarantee certainty. As we reflect on Peng Jiamu's disappearance, we are invited to consider the broader mysteries that the natural world holds. What forces shape these vast deserts, and what might still lie hidden beneath the surface? Remnants of lost civilizations, undiscovered species, or perhaps phenomena yet to be understood. The desert winds whisper through the dunes, carrying with them unanswered questions. What really happened to Peng Jiamu in the Lop Nor desert? Does the truth lie buried beneath the salt flats, scattered across the sands, or forever lost to the void? And beyond this singular story, what other mysteries await discovery in the world's most remote and unforgiving places? The desert remains silent, vast, and indifferent, an eternal witness to the fragile and fleeting footprints of those who dare to cross it. And so, Peng's tale lingers, a haunting testament to the enduring allure and peril of exploration, beckoning us to continue searching, questioning, and wondering. From the vast, shifting deserts of China's Lop Nor, where the earth seems to swallow those who dare traverse it, we now turn our gaze upward to the endless expanse of the skies. Above the clouds, where the horizon melts into infinity, lies another kind of mystery, one woven with the poetry of flight and the shadow of disappearance. This is the story of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, a celebrated author, pioneering aviator, and a man lost to the skies. Imagine the early morning air over the Mediterranean Sea on July 31st, 1944. The sun is just beginning to climb, casting a pale light over the tranquil waters. Somewhere above, a lone Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter plane takes off from an airbase in Corsica, carrying one of the 20th century's most enigmatic figures. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was not just a pilot. He was a dreamer who transformed the wonder of flight into timeless literature. Yet, this flight would be his last. Saint-Exupéry had spent much of his life balancing two passions, the skies and the written word. His most famous work, The Little Prince, captures the fragile beauty of human experience through the eyes of a childlike traveler. But behind the poetic prose was a man deeply entwined with the real dangers of aerial warfare during World War II. On that fateful day, while flying a reconnaissance mission over southern France, his plane vanished without a trace. For decades, the exact circumstances of his disappearance remained shrouded in mystery. Was his plane shot down by enemy fire, or did mechanical failure send him crashing into the sea? The absence of wreckage and survivors fueled speculation and sorrow alike. His family, admirers, and historians were left only with fragments of evidence and haunting questions. In 1998, the mystery took a dramatic turn when a fisherman off the coast of Marseille discovered a silver bracelet engraved with Saint-Exupéry's name. Not long after, in 2000, a diver located the wreckage of a P-38 Lightning on the seabed near Marseille. The discovery confirmed the plane's final resting place, but failed to resolve the deeper question: what truly happened in those final moments? Mainstream investigations suggest that Saint-Exupéry's aircraft was likely hit by a German fighter or succumbed to mechanical failure, leading to a crash into the sea. Yet, the exact sequence of events remains elusive. There were no witnesses, no distress calls, no definitive accounts. This absence of clarity invites us to reflect on the nature of disappearance itself, how a man so vivid in life can become a shadow in death. Beyond the factual, more speculative theories have circulated. Some propose that Saint-Exupéry may have chosen to vanish deliberately, escaping the turmoil of war and the personal demons that weighed on him. Others whisper of secret missions, covert intelligence work, and the possibility that his plane was downed not by accident, but by design. Though such ideas remain unconfirmed, they underscore the allure of mystery surrounding his fate. Saint-Exupéry's disappearance resonates not only because of his fame, but because it embodies the profound vulnerability of flight. The tension between human aspiration and the unpredictable forces of nature and conflict. The sky, for all its freedom, can become a silent grave, vast and indifferent. As we contemplate the calm Mediterranean waters where his plane now rests, a place both serene and somber, we are reminded of the countless stories of those who vanished above the clouds. Explorers, warriors, dreamers, all swallowed by the silence of the skies. What is it about the act of flying that so often intersects with mystery and loss? Is it the boundless freedom it promises, or the fragile thread of life stretched thin between earth and air? And in the case of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, What echoes remain in the space where his voice, both as a pilot and a writer, once soared? His story invites us to look beyond the facts, to dwell in the quiet spaces where history meets imagination. It asks us to consider what it means to disappear, not just physically, but within the collective memory of a world that yearns to understand, but may never fully grasp the final truth. As the sun sets over the Mediterranean, casting long shadows across the water, the mystery lingers, an open question hanging in the vast, uncharted sky. What secrets still rest beneath the waves, and what stories remain untold in the silence where the heavens meet the sea? From the silent depths of the Mediterranean, where Antoine de Saint-Exupéry vanished among the clouds and sea, we now turn our attention to the distant shores of the New World, a land of untamed wilderness, ancient forests, and countless stories waiting to be uncovered. Among these tales is one that has captivated historians, explorers, and storytellers for centuries: the legendary Voyage of Madoc, a Welsh prince said to have sailed westward long before Columbus, potentially reshaping our understanding of early exploration. But was Madoc's journey a remarkable voyage of discovery, or merely a myth swallowed by time? Imagine the rugged coastline of North America as it might have appeared in the 12th century. Towering trees stretching to the sky, vast rivers carving the land, and indigenous peoples thriving in harmony with the wilderness. It is a world both alien and profound, a landscape that challenges the imagination. Into this unknown sailed Madoc, according to legend, fleeing civil war in Wales and seeking new lands across the ocean. The story first emerges in medieval Welsh folklore, later finding its way into historical accounts and maps. Madoc is said to have left Wales around 1170, commanding a fleet of ships and hundreds of followers, landing somewhere on the eastern shores of what is now the United States. Some versions suggest he founded settlements, establishing a Welsh-speaking colony lost to history. Yet, despite the compelling narrative, concrete evidence remains elusive. Unlike the well-documented voyages of later explorers, Madoc's expedition exists largely in the realm of oral tradition and scattered references. No verified archaeological sites or incontrovertible artifacts definitively linked to his journey have been found. This absence has fueled decades of debate. Was Madoc's voyage a genuine chapter of history, or a captivating myth crafted to serve national pride or political agendas? Historical records from the time offer little clarity. Chronicles from Wales mention the prince and his quest, but details are sparse and often contradictory. Some scholars argue that Madoc's story was popularized during the 16th century as part of England's claims to the New World, used to bolster the idea that British explorers had reached the Americas first. Others maintain the tale may stem from earlier forgotten voyages, proof that transatlantic crossings were not the sole domain of later European powers. Adding to the intrigue are indigenous oral histories that describe encounters with strange visitors who spoke an unfamiliar tongue and wore different clothing. Could these tales echo distant memories of Madoc's arrival? Or are they part of the broader, complex narratives of first contact, misunderstood and reinterpreted over centuries? More speculative theories abound. Some suggest that Madoc's voyage led to the mingling of cultures, influencing indigenous art, language, or customs in ways subtle and difficult to trace. Others propose that secretive Welsh settlements survived in isolation, hidden deep within North America's forests, forgotten enclaves waiting to be rediscovered. Skeptics point out the lack of tangible proof and caution against romanticizing folklore as history. Yet, the allure of the unknown and the possibility that pre-Columbian exploration was more diverse than traditionally acknowledged continues to inspire curiosity. In examining Madoc's story, we are reminded of the power of legend, how it shapes identity, fuels imagination, and challenges us to look beyond accepted narratives. It raises fundamental questions about exploration itself. How many journeys have been lost to time? How do stories evolve when filtered through generations? And what fragments of truth remain buried beneath layers of myth and interpretation? The landscape that Madoc might have encountered, the vast forests, winding rivers, and rugged coastline, still holds mysteries. Archaeological sites continue to yield new insights into the lives of indigenous peoples long before European contact. Could some yet reveal traces of forgotten visitors, subtle signs of an ancient encounter? As we contemplate this enduring legend, we are invited to dwell in the space between history and myth, fact and folklore. Madoc's voyage, whether real or imagined, symbolizes humanity's restless spirit of discovery and the elusive nature of truth in the shadows of the past. What remains hidden beneath the canopy of time? How many stories like Madoc's wait to be uncovered or understood anew? And how does the search for answers reshape not only our knowledge of history, but our sense of who we are? The mystery of Madoc's voyage lingers, a question mark cast across the oceans of time, beckoning us to explore further, to question deeper, and to embrace the unknown with both rigor and wonder. From the shadowy tales of lost voyagers in the New World, our journey now leads us to the vast, sun-baked heart of Australia, a land both ancient and unforgiving, where endless deserts stretch beneath an unyielding sky. It is here, amid a terrain of red sands, ghost gums, and hidden water holes, that one of the most enduring mysteries of exploration quietly unfolds: the disappearance of Ludwig Leichhardt. Ludwig Leichhardt was a man driven by curiosity and courage, a German naturalist and explorer who dreamed of unlocking the secrets of Australia's interior. In the mid-19th century, the continent's vast deserts were largely unknown to European settlers, an enigmatic landscape of extremes, where the land could either sustain life or swallow it whole. The promise of discovery beckoned, but so did the peril. In 1848, Leichhardt set out on what was to be his final expedition, determined to traverse Australia from east to west. His route would carry him across some of the harshest environments on Earth: the Simpson Desert's scorching dunes, the Great Sandy Desert's barren expanses, and the seemingly endless Spinifex Plains. Accompanied by a small party and a modest supply train, he embarked on a journey that would become one of the continent's most haunting disappearances. At first, the expedition proceeded with promise. Leichhardt's detailed journals described landscapes both beautiful and brutal, the vast open skies, the resilient flora, and the indigenous peoples whose knowledge of the land was invaluable. But as the group pushed deeper into the wilderness, the challenges intensified. Water sources became scarce, heat and exhaustion took their toll, and the unforgiving terrain seemed to conspire against them. Then, silence. After their departure from the Darling Downs in Queensland, all communication ceased. No letters, no reports, no sightings. Leichhardt and his companions vanished without a trace. Despite numerous search parties and investigations over the following decades, the fate of the expedition remains one of Australia's greatest unsolved mysteries. What exactly happened to Leichhardt and his team? Several theories attempt to explain their disappearance, each shaped by fragments of evidence, eyewitness accounts, and the harsh realities of the outback. The most straightforward explanation suggests they succumbed to starvation and dehydration, victims of the desert's merciless conditions. The vast distances, scorching heat, and lack of reliable water sources would challenge even the most seasoned explorers. Yet, this fails to account for the total absence of remains or definitive traces. Search parties uncovered only scattered artifacts: an axe, fragments of camp equipment, and an isolated journal entry, but no bodies or conclusive evidence. Another possibility is that the group perished in an accident. Perhaps a sandstorm or flash flood swept them away. Australia's deserts, while often appearing static, can transform suddenly and violently. However, no wreckage or mass grave has ever been found to support this theory conclusively. More unsettling is the idea that Leichhardt and his party might have encountered hostile forces or become embroiled in conflicts, whether with indigenous groups defending their land or other settlers in the region. Some reports, though unverified, suggest that faint traces of the party were seen near Aboriginal communities, or that relics from the expedition surfaced far from the original route. Could the explorers have integrated or been absorbed into indigenous societies, their fates forever altered by cultural intersections? Speculative theories extend further into the realm of the unknown. Some suggest that Leichhardt discovered hidden passages or secret water sources that allowed survival beyond what was believed possible. Others propose the intervention of mysterious natural phenomena, disorienting mirages, uncharted hazards, or even phenomena as yet unexplained by science. Over the years, the search for Leichhardt's fate has taken on almost mythic proportions. Explorers, historians, and treasure hunters have combed the deserts, inspired by tantalizing clues and a profound respect for the explorer's daring. Some claim to have found artifacts possibly linked to the expedition, but none have been definitively authenticated. Leichhardt himself remains a figure of fascination, a man whose determination and spirit embodied the essence of exploration, yet whose ultimate fate symbolizes the risks inherent in confronting nature's vast unknowns. His story reminds us of the delicate balance between human ambition and the environment's power. Beyond the search for physical evidence, Leichhardt's disappearance raises profound questions about the nature of exploration and the unknown. How do we reconcile the vastness of the wilderness with our desire for understanding and control? What are the limits of human endurance when faced with isolation and extremes? And what secrets does the desert still guard, hidden beneath its ever-shifting sands? The desert landscapes that swallowed Leichhardt's expedition remain largely unchanged, vast, beautiful, and indifferent. They continue to challenge adventurers and scholars alike, a living testament to both the grandeur and the dangers of the natural world. In reflecting on this mystery, we must also consider the voices often left unheard in the historical narrative, the indigenous peoples who have traversed these lands for tens of thousands of years. Their knowledge and stories hold keys to understanding the environment and, possibly, the fate of those who dared to cross it. Yet much remains unshared or lost to history, adding layers of complexity to the enigma. What might new technologies, such as satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, reveal about these remote regions? Could future discoveries finally shed light on the fate of Leichhardt and his companions? Or will the desert's silence endure, keeping its secrets just beyond our reach? The mystery of Ludwig Leichhardt's final expedition invites us to explore not just a physical landscape, but the very nature of human curiosity, resilience, and the unknown. It challenges us to respect the boundaries of our knowledge while inspiring the relentless quest to push beyond them. As the Australian sun sets over endless dunes and ghostly plains, the question remains: what became of Leichhardt, his party, and their dreams of crossing a continent? And what other stories, lost to time and sand, wait patiently to be uncovered? From the frozen heights of Everest, where the thin air has swallowed countless dreams and ambitions, we now turn to the endless expanse of the Arctic, a realm of ice and shadow where the boundary between heroism and tragedy often blurs. It is here, amid the vast white deserts and roaring polar storms, that the final chapter of Roald Amundsen unfolds, a story marked by courage, duty, and a disappearance that still echoes across the polar wastes. Roald Amundsen was no stranger to the extremes. The Norwegian explorer had already carved his name into history as the first person to reach the South Pole in 1911, navigating treacherous ice and bitter cold with unmatched skill and determination. Yet, even such a titan of exploration could not escape the enigma that so often accompanies the pursuit of the unknown. In June 1928, Amundsen embarked on what was intended to be a mission of rescue, searching for the Italian airship Italia, which had vanished in the Arctic after attempting to reach the North Pole. The Italia, commanded by General Umberto Nobile, had crashed onto the ice, leaving its crew stranded in a hostile and unforgiving environment. When Amundsen took to the skies in his seaplane, he carried with him the hope of saving lives, yet the Arctic's vastness would prove indifferent to such hopes. The location of Amundsen's flight, near the archipelago of Spitsbergen, part of the Svalbard Islands, was as remote as it was perilous. Rugged glaciers, shifting ice floes, and bitter winds created a landscape both beautiful and brutal. Beneath the shimmering auroras, the ice stretched endlessly, a frozen ocean cracked by pressure ridges and hidden dangers. This was a place where navigation was a challenge, communication fragile, and survival a delicate balance. Amundsen's plane was last seen heading out over this icy expanse, and then silence. Despite extensive search efforts launched by multiple nations, no trace of Amundsen, his aircraft, or his crew was found. The mystery of his disappearance remains one of the most haunting chapters in polar exploration. How could such a seasoned explorer, a man intimately familiar with the Arctic's moods, vanish without a trace? The facts paint a picture of courage tempered by uncertainty. Amundsen's decision to join the rescue mission was motivated by a profound sense of responsibility, a testament to his character and the unspoken bonds between explorers who risk everything in pursuit of discovery and survival. But the Arctic is a place where even the most skilled can be undone by weather, mechanical failure, or the treacherous nature of the ice itself. Theories about the fate of Amundsen's final flight abound. Some suggest the plane succumbed to engine trouble or was overwhelmed by sudden weather changes. Others speculate that it may have crashed onto the shifting ice, breaking apart and sinking beneath the freezing waters. The Arctic's remoteness and the technological limitations of the time meant that locating wreckage or survivors was, and remains, incredibly difficult. Over the years, sporadic reports of unidentified wreckage and debris have surfaced, but none conclusively linked to Amundsen's plane. Some accounts mention faint radio signals detected after the disappearance, hinting at a brief survival after the crash, yet no rescue followed. Could the crew have survived longer than believed, only to be claimed by the relentless cold? More speculative theories venture into the realm of the unknown. Could the aircraft have drifted beneath ice sheets, hidden in crevasses, or been scavenged by nature? Have changing ice patterns or rising waters submerged evidence that might one day be uncovered? Some have even suggested that the search for Amundsen was complicated by political tensions of the era, leaving gaps in the historical record. Amundsen's disappearance also invites reflection on the very nature of exploration, the fine line between heroism and tragedy, between hope and loss. His final mission was not one of conquest, but of compassion, a willingness to risk all to save others. Yet the Arctic, indifferent and immutable, kept its secrets tightly guarded. The legacy of Amundsen's last flight is woven into the broader story of polar exploration, an ongoing saga of human endurance set against one of the most extreme environments on Earth. It reminds us that exploration is not just about reaching new frontiers, but about facing the unknown with courage, even when the outcome is uncertain. Today, the icy expanses near Spitsbergen remain as remote and mysterious as they were nearly a century ago. Advances in technology, from satellite imaging to underwater exploration, hold the promise of uncovering new clues. Yet the Arctic's shifting ice and vastness make discovery challenging, leaving the fate of Amundsen's final flight suspended in time. What might future expeditions reveal about that last journey? Could the wreckage lie buried beneath layers of ice, waiting for the right moment to be found? Or will the Arctic's silence endure, a testament to the limits of human endeavor? Roald Amundsen's story, both triumphant and tragic, continues to inspire. A reminder of the indomitable spirit that drives us to explore and the mysteries that sometimes remain just beyond reach. As the polar night falls over the ice and snow, one can only wonder what still lies hidden in those frozen wastes and what echoes of courage and sacrifice are preserved beneath the eternal ice. From the silent, frozen expanses where Roald Amundsen vanished in the icy Arctic air, we now turn our attention to another chilling chapter in the saga of polar exploration, an expedition that began with hope and ambition, but descended into a desperate struggle for survival on the drifting ice. This is the story of the Italia, the airship commanded by Umberto Nobile, and the haunting mystery of its fate amid the unforgiving Arctic wilderness. Picture the high Arctic skies in the summer of 1928, a vast canvas of pale blues and whites stretching endlessly above a landscape carved from ice and snow. Here, near the North Pole, the air is sharp and biting, the sunlight piercing but cold. Below, the sea ice lies cracked and shifting, a fragile and ever-moving mosaic of frozen ocean. It was in this forbidding environment that the Italia set out on its ambitious journey, seeking to reach the pole and etch its place in the annals of exploration. Umberto Nobile, an accomplished Italian engineer and aeronaut, had designed the Italia to be a marvel of technology, an airship capable of navigating the polar skies with unprecedented range and endurance. The expedition held promise, capturing the world's imagination with dreams of conquering the Arctic frontier from the air. Yet, despite meticulous planning, the very nature of the Arctic would prove merciless. On May 24, 1928, the Italia lifted off from Svalbard, its massive gas-filled envelope glistening under the sun, carrying a crew of adventurers and scientists. For days, it traced a path over the shifting ice, sending back reports of the vast, desolate landscape below. Then, disaster struck. As the airship approached the pole, encountering severe weather and turbulent winds, it lost control. A violent storm battered the Italia, causing it to crash land onto the ice. The envelope was torn, and the gondola, carrying Nobile and his crew, was separated from the main body. In the chaotic aftermath, the airship's survivors found themselves stranded on the vast, drifting ice floes, miles from any help. What followed is a gripping tale of endurance and tragedy. Nobile and part of his crew were stranded on the wreckage of the airship's gondola, while others scattered across the ice. Rescue efforts were launched by multiple countries, involving ships, planes, and ground expeditions, but the Arctic's harsh conditions complicated every attempt. The drama unfolded against a backdrop of ceaseless cold and shifting ice, with days stretched out beneath an endless polar sky. The survivors faced starvation, frostbite, and the psychological toll of isolation. Some perished on the ice. Others were rescued in daring operations that captured headlines worldwide. Yet, despite these efforts, many questions remain unanswered, especially about the fate of those lost on the ice and the precise circumstances that led to the crash. The official investigations attributed the crash largely to the severe weather conditions and technical failures. Yet, as with many polar expeditions, speculation has lingered. Could errors in navigation have played a role? Were there mechanical shortcomings in the airship's design, or was it simply the overwhelming power of nature that doomed the Italia? Beyond these mainstream explanations, more speculative theories have surfaced over the decades. Some suggest that political tensions of the time may have influenced the reporting and rescue operations, complicating the narrative. Others propose that parts of the wreckage might have been carried away by ice floes, sinking into the depths of the Arctic Ocean. still waiting to be found. The psychological dimension of the tragedy is equally compelling. The survivors endured not just physical hardship, but the crushing weight of uncertainty and fear. The Arctic ice is an alien environment, indifferent to human suffering, where time seems to freeze along with the world around it. What thoughts must have haunted those trapped on the drifting ice, knowing rescue was uncertain and death could come silently and swiftly? Nobile himself emerged from the ordeal alive, but not unscathed. His leadership was both praised and criticized, with some accusing him of abandoning part of his crew. These controversies added a human drama to an already complex and tragic story, raising questions about decision-making under extreme pressure. For decades, the Italia's wreckage remained elusive. Explorers and researchers sought to locate it, driven by a desire to bring closure to one of the Arctic's most enduring mysteries. Modern technologies such as sonar and satellite imaging have increased the chances of discovery. But the Arctic remains a shifting, treacherous environment. The ice moves, cracks, and melts, altering landscapes and hiding secrets beneath its frozen surface. The Italia expedition also symbolizes the broader risks and rewards of early 20th century exploration, a time when human ambition outpaced the limits of technology, and the race to conquer unknown frontiers exacted a steep human cost. It serves as a poignant reminder that the Arctic, despite its stark beauty, is a realm where nature's power dwarfs human endeavor. Today, the story of the Italia invites us to reflect not only on the tangible events, the crash, the rescue, the lost lives, but also on the deeper mysteries that endure. What lies beneath the drifting ice? Could fragments of the airship still be preserved, frozen in time? Are there stories yet untold among the scattered remnants of that ill-fated voyage? As we gaze toward the vast white silence of the Arctic, the tale of Nobile's Italia echoes with unresolved questions. It is a story of bravery and survival, of dreams forged in the icy air and shattered on the shifting ice. And it remains, at its core, a mystery, a haunting reminder of the thin line between triumph and tragedy on the world's final frontiers. What secrets will the Arctic yet reveal? And how many more stories of vanished explorers wait beneath the frozen expanse, silent but not forgotten? From the drifting Arctic ice where Nobile's Italia met its tragic fate, our journey now takes us to the vast and relentless continent of Antarctica, a world of stark beauty and brutal extremes, where survival teeters on the edge of human endurance. It was here, amid the endless white plains and jagged peaks, that one of exploration's most haunting tales unfolded, the story of Douglas Mawson, a man who would become Antarctica's lone survivor. Imagine the Antarctic landscape through Mawson's eyes, an endless horizon of glittering ice stretching beneath a sky that shifts from blindingly bright to shadowed gray, the cold so sharp it seems to pierce to the bone. The wind howls relentlessly, carrying with it a biting chill that numbs both body and mind. This is a place where the sun disappears for months at a time, where the silence is vast and absolute, broken only by the groan of the ice and the distant crack of glaciers calving into the sea. Douglas Mawson was no stranger to this harsh realm. As a geologist and seasoned explorer, he had already earned acclaim as part of Ernest Shackleton's Nimrod expedition before leading his own ambitious venture, the Australasian Antarctic expedition of 1911 to 1914. His mission was scientific but also deeply personal: to chart unknown territories, collect geological samples, and etch Australia's name into the history of polar discovery. The expedition began with promise. Mawson and his team set up base camps, explored remote regions, and gathered valuable data that would advance our understanding of the frozen continent. Yet, as with so many polar endeavors, fate intervened with cruel unpredictability. The turning point came during a sledging journey along the treacherous coastline. Mawson, accompanied by two fellow explorers, Belgrave Ninnis and Xavier Mertz, set out on a traverse that would become a journey of unimaginable hardship. Early into the trek, disaster struck. Ninnis fell into a concealed crevasse, disappearing beneath the ice with a sled full of supplies. Suddenly, the trio was reduced to two, and then, tragically, to one. Mertz's health deteriorated rapidly in the relentless cold, and he too succumbed before they could reach safety. Alone, and with dwindling provisions, Mawson faced a perilous return journey. His body weakened by exhaustion, starvation, and possibly poisoning from eating huskies, Mawson endured a grueling 320-mile solo trek across the Antarctic wasteland. The details of his survival have become legend. His frostbitten feet, hallucinations, and moments where death seemed certain, but somehow was eluded. Mawson's endurance was extraordinary, a testament to human will confronting the indifferent forces of nature. Yet, while the survival story itself captivates, the expedition also raises deeper questions. How did Mawson survive when his companions perished? Were there choices made or hidden moments that tipped the balance between life and death? And what remains obscured beneath the layers of ice and time? Official accounts describe Mawson's ordeal as a harrowing battle against the elements and fate, but some aspects remain enigmatic. For instance, the cause of Xavier Mertz's death is debated. Some scientists suggest it was malnutrition or the effects of hypervitaminosis A from consuming dog liver, while others speculate more unusual causes. Could there have been factors overlooked or lost to history? Moreover, Mawson's solo journey is remarkable not only for the physical survival, but for what it reveals about the human mind under extreme duress. Did his hallucinations hint at a fragile psyche pushed to the brink? Or did they serve as a crucial mechanism for endurance, a mental refuge amid desolation? Beyond the personal narrative, Mawson's expedition is set against a backdrop of the broader mysteries of Antarctica, a continent that even today guards secrets beneath its ice sheets. Some have speculated that Mawson's exploration routes intersected with regions that remain scarcely understood, places where strange magnetic anomalies or unexplained geological formations hint at deeper enigmas. There are even fringe theories that suggest Mawson's expedition encountered phenomena or remnants of past civilizations buried in the ice. Claims that mainstream science neither confirms nor endorses, but that linger in the margins of exploration lore. Could the Antarctic ice conceal evidence of ancient human activity or other mysteries waiting to be uncovered? Adding to the intrigue are the many missing pieces of the expedition's story. Records from that era are incomplete, and some personal accounts and diaries were lost or destroyed. What might these lost documents reveal about the true nature of the expedition, the psychological states of its members, or unrecorded encounters? Mawson himself went on to become a celebrated figure, his survival tale inspiring generations of explorers and scientists. Yet, even in his later years, he maintained a certain reticence about the full details of those dark days, perhaps understanding that some experiences defy explanation, or that the Antarctic holds on to its secrets tightly. As we contemplate Mawson's lone trek across that frozen expanse, the mind is drawn to the stark contrasts of the Antarctic environment. Life and death entwined, human fragility and resilience, hope and despair. The continent itself is a paradox, seemingly lifeless yet profoundly alive with mystery, a place where time slows and stories linger beneath the ice. What remains undiscovered in those vast white wastes? Could further expeditions unlock new truths about Mawson's journey or the hidden geography he traversed? Are there artifacts or remnants lying buried beneath kilometers of ice that might rewrite the history of Antarctic exploration? Mawson's story, while a testament to survival, also invites reflection on the nature of exploration itself, the allure of the unknown, the thin line between courage and folly, and the ultimate price paid by those who venture into the world's most hostile frontiers. As the icy winds sweep across the Antarctic plateau, we are left with a question that echoes in the silence. How much do we truly know about the hidden chapters of human endurance? And how many more mysteries lie locked in the frozen heart of Antarctica, waiting for those brave enough to seek them? From the endless whiteness of Antarctica, where Douglas Mawson endured unimaginable solitude and despair, our journey moves now to another chapter of the frozen continent, one marked by hope, ambition, and ultimately tragic final steps. The Terra Nova expedition, led by Robert Falcon Scott, stands as one of history's most poignant tales of exploration and loss, a story that continues to echo through the ice and silence of the South Pole. Picture the vast Antarctic plateau in the early 20th century, a realm of stark, breathtaking beauty and merciless extremes. The ice stretches to the horizon, reflecting an unyielding glare beneath a sky that alternates between brilliant daylight and the dim twilight of polar winters. It is a world where every breath carries a biting chill, and every step risks falling into hidden crevasses or succumbing to frostbite. Against this desolate backdrop, a group of explorers set out on a mission that would test the limits of human endurance and spirit. Robert Falcon Scott, a seasoned Royal Navy officer and veteran explorer, had already attempted to reach the South Pole. By 1910, aboard the ship Terra Nova, he embarked on what was intended to be the final push, to claim the pole for Britain and secure his place in history. The stakes were immense. The race to the pole had become a contest not only of national pride, but of human ambition itself, with Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen also vying for the prize. Scott's team consisted of men whose courage was matched by their resolve: scientists, soldiers, and experienced polar travelers. Together, they faced a landscape of shifting ice and treacherous weather, braving gale-force winds and temperatures that could plunge to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Their progress was slow, methodical, marked by physical hardship and the relentless demands of survival. Yet, as the expedition reached its climax, a series of events would turn triumph into tragedy. Scott and his 4 companions arrived at the South Pole on January 17, 1912, only to find the Norwegian flag already planted and Amundsen's team gone. The bitter disappointment was compounded by the realization that their long journey home would be even more perilous. The return trek would test every ounce of their strength. Exhaustion, starvation, and the unforgiving Antarctic environment closed in. One by one, Scott's companions fell victim to the cold and fatigue. Ultimately, Scott himself would perish in a tent just 11 miles from a supply depot. His final days chronicled in haunting journal entries discovered years later by search parties. This somber conclusion has become one of exploration's most enduring stories, a sobering testament to the perils of polar adventure. But beyond the accepted narrative lie questions that continue to invite reflection and debate. Why did Scott's team fail to survive when other expeditions managed to endure similar conditions? Were there decisions made or oversights committed that hastened their downfall? Some have pointed to the reliance on ponies rather than dogs for transport, the timing of the journey, or the logistical planning of supply depots. Others have speculated on factors less easily explained: unusual weather patterns, possible scurvy outbreaks, or even psychological stresses that eroded resolve. One particularly compelling puzzle revolves around the harsh weather Scott's party encountered on their return. Historical meteorological data shows that February 1912 experienced record-low temperatures and intense blizzards. Did these extraordinary conditions seal their fate? Was it simply a cruel twist of nature, or might there be hidden environmental forces at play, unique atmospheric phenomena that still elude full scientific explanation? Further intrigue emerges when examining the messages Scott left behind. His final letters and diary entries reveal a man not only grappling with physical suffering, but also reflecting on the nature of sacrifice and destiny. Did Scott foresee his own end? How did he reconcile the weight of failure with the dignity of striving? Speculation extends even to the specifics of the last days. Some theories suggest that Scott and his companions might have survived longer than official accounts indicate, potentially enduring weeks after their presumed deaths. Could their bodies have been missed by rescue teams, or might there be undiscovered remains buried beneath the shifting Antarctic ice? Beyond the expedition itself, the Terra Nova story resonates with broader questions about exploration and the human relationship with the unknown. Scott's endeavor was as much about scientific discovery as it was about conquest, collecting geological samples, mapping uncharted territories, and studying the polar environment. What scientific treasures were lost with the party? What might we have learned had they survived? More speculative ideas have also surfaced over the decades. Fringe theories occasionally propose that Scott's expedition encountered unexplained phenomena, mysterious lights in the sky, strange ice formations, or even traces of other lost expeditions buried beneath the snow. While these claims remain unverified and often dismissed by mainstream scholars, they underscore the almost mythic status the Terra Nova saga has acquired in the public imagination. The harsh Antarctic silence preserves many secrets. How much of the full story lies hidden beneath the ice? Could future expeditions, armed with modern technology, uncover artifacts or data that challenge our current understanding? Might remote sensing or ice-penetrating radar one day reveal the precise location of Scott's final camp or the lost supply depots? As we examine Scott's final steps, the narrative also raises profound questions about human ambition in extreme environments. What drives men and women to risk everything for the promise of discovery or national pride? How do explorers balance bravery with caution, hope with realism? And what lessons can be drawn from Scott's tragic end for modern adventurers facing new frontiers, whether on Earth or beyond? The Terra Nova expedition is not merely a historical episode. It is a mirror reflecting the complexities of exploration, the triumphs and the tragedies, the seen and unseen, the known and the unknowable. Scott's story invites us to contemplate the fragile boundary between heroism and hubris, between human aspiration and the indifferent forces of nature. As the Antarctic winds continue to sweep across the desolate plains where Scott's footsteps faded, we are left with a question that reverberates through time. What remains concealed in that frozen wilderness, and how much more does Antarctica still hold, waiting for those who dare to seek? As the icy winds of Antarctica fade into the distance, carrying with them the echoes of Robert Falcon Scott's final steps, our journey now turns westward, across the vast and often unforgiving Atlantic Ocean, a watery expanse that has witnessed some of history's greatest feats of exploration, but also many enigmatic disappearances. Among these vanished souls, the story of the Corte brothers stands as one of the oldest and most enduring mysteries in the age of discovery. Imagine the North Atlantic in the early 16th century, a turbulent seascape dominated by windswept waves and mist-shrouded horizons. It was a world barely understood, where mariners faced the unknown with nothing but rudimentary maps, a compass, and their indomitable will. Into this formidable theater sailed the Corte brothers, Gaspar, Miguel, and later João, Portuguese explorers whose ambitions would draw them far from the familiar shores of Europe into the mysterious waters of the New World. The Corte are credited with some of the earliest European voyages to the northeast coast of North America, long before the well-documented expeditions of John Cabot and others. Their journeys, which began around 1500, took them into the icy waters near Greenland and what is today Newfoundland and Labrador. Yet, despite their important role in the unfolding story of exploration, the fate of these brothers remains shrouded in uncertainty and enigma. Gaspar Corte Real's disappearance in 1501 marked the beginning of the mystery. After setting out on a voyage to find new lands and riches, Gaspar never returned. His brother Miguel mounted a search in 1502, but he too vanished without a trace. João, the youngest, would undertake his own expeditions, but records of his final journey are murky, leaving historians to piece together fragments of reports, letters, and second-hand accounts. What could have happened to these intrepid explorers in the unforgiving Atlantic? The prevailing theories offer a blend of harsh realities and tantalizing speculation. Storms and treacherous seas are the immediate suspects. Vessels of the time were fragile, and the North Atlantic was notorious for sudden tempests that could swallow ships whole. Icebergs drifting southward from the Arctic presented lethal obstacles, and the frigid waters left little hope for survival should a ship founder. Yet, the mystery deepens when considering other possibilities. Could the Corte Real brothers have been captured or killed by indigenous peoples? While early interactions between Europeans and Native Americans were often fraught, evidence of such confrontations remains sparse and inconclusive. Alternatively, might they have reached lands beyond their intended destination, becoming stranded or assimilated in remote communities, their fates lost in the annals of time? Some historians have suggested that the brothers may have ventured even further than recorded, possibly discovering parts of what we now call Canada long before other Europeans. Yet, the absence of clear, contemporaneous documentation fuels speculation. Are there undiscovered artifacts or settlements awaiting rediscovery beneath layers of forest and soil, relics of these earliest contacts? In addition to the Atlantic's natural perils and the fog of historical record-keeping, the Corte Real mystery has been complicated by political and cultural factors. Portugal, embroiled in the intense competition of maritime powers during the Renaissance, may have deliberately obscured certain details of the voyages to protect claims and interests. Some documents were lost or destroyed over centuries, further clouding the truth. The search for answers has taken many forms over the centuries. Archaeologists and marine historians have scoured shipwreck sites, pored over ancient maps, and analyzed indigenous oral histories in hopes of uncovering clues. Yet, definitive proof remains elusive. Could the Corte Real's ships lie sunken beneath the Atlantic waves, their timbers preserved in icy depths, waiting to reveal secrets to modern technology? More speculative theories occasionally emerge from the depths of history. Some propose that the brothers' fate was tied to early encounters with Norse-descended peoples in Greenland or Labrador, whose own lost settlements may have intersected with these expeditions. Others hint at clandestine motives behind the voyages, secret missions, rivalries, or even early attempts at colonization that ended in disaster. The ambiguity of their story serves as a reminder of the inherent risks of exploration in an era when the maps themselves were works of imagination and the ocean a vast, unpredictable force. How did the Corte Real brothers navigate the thin line between courage and calamity? What thoughts filled their minds as they sailed into the mists, aware that every journey might be their last? Moreover, their disappearance raises timeless questions about the nature of historical memory. How do stories become legends? How much is lost to the passage of time, and how much can be reclaimed through diligent inquiry? The Corte Real saga is not merely a tale of vanished explorers, but a prism through which we view the fragile threads connecting past and present. As modern adventurers and scholars continue to probe these ancient waters, armed with sonar, satellite imaging, and forensic techniques unimaginable in the 16th century, there is hope that someday the Corte Real enigma may be illuminated. Yet, until that moment, the Atlantic keeps its secrets well, the waves erasing footprints but never quite silencing the whispers of those who dared to seek the unknown. What remains beneath the surface? Sunken ships, forgotten journals, or perhaps stories passed down in shadowy corners of the world? And beyond the fate of the Corte Real brothers themselves, what other lost voyages and untold mysteries linger in the vastness of the seas? As we let the North Atlantic's restless tides carry us forward, the story of the Corte Reals reminds us of the thin line between discovery and disappearance, and the enduring human quest to push beyond the horizon, even when the price is never to return. As the North Atlantic's endless expanse slowly recedes behind us, our journey of vanished explorers brings us to a dark chapter of maritime history, an expedition marked by ambition, calamity, and profound loss. In the summer of 1746, the Duc d'Anville expedition set sail from France with great fanfare and heavy hopes, only to become one of the most tragic and mysterious naval disasters of the 18th century. This was a fleet destined not for glory, but for disaster, lost to storms, disease, and despair in the unforgiving seas. The year was 1746, a time when the Atlantic Ocean remained a battleground for colonial powers, vying for dominance in the New World. France sought to reclaim lost territories and challenge British control in North America, particularly in the region of Nova Scotia. The Duc d'Anville expedition was commissioned as a massive military endeavor, a fleet of warships and transport vessels carrying thousands of soldiers, sailors, and supplies. Its mission was clear: to retake Acadia, modern-day Nova Scotia, and turn the tide in France's favor during the ongoing War of Austrian Succession. Picture the port of Rochefort, on France's Atlantic coast, where the fleet assembled. A towering armada of over 60 ships, bristling with cannons, crowded with men, and loaded with the promise of victory. Yet, from the outset, the expedition was plagued by misfortune. Delays in departure, inadequate provisions, and outbreaks of illness foreshadowed the calamity ahead. But it was only when the fleet finally put to sea that the full measure of tragedy began to unfold. Crossing the Atlantic is never easy, especially for a fleet of this size in the mid-18th century. Ships of wood and sail were vulnerable to the ocean's caprice. And in the dark days that followed, the Duc d'Anville expedition met with violent storms that battered the ships mercilessly. Fierce winds tore sails and shattered masts, while turbulent waves threatened to swallow entire vessels. Many were driven off course, scattered across the vast ocean with no hope of regrouping. But the tempest above was only part of the affliction. Below decks, a more insidious enemy was at work. Disease, likely typhus or scurvy, ravaged the men in the cramped, unsanitary conditions. The cramped ships became floating tombs where hundreds succumbed daily. Starvation and despair deepened the crisis, and command began to falter. The expedition's leader, Admiral Jean-Baptiste Louis-Frédéric de la Rochefoucauld, Duc d'Anville himself, died at sea, his death casting the fleet further into chaos and uncertainty. Reports from survivors and contemporary accounts describe a fleet consumed by death and confusion. Bodies piled in the ship's holds, morale crumbled, and many men drifted into madness or hopeless resignation. Some vessels were forced to turn back, while others limped onward, only to be lost to the relentless Atlantic or abandoned to fate. The survivors who finally reached the shores of Nova Scotia found a land scarred by the ravages of war and waiting for a fleet that never arrived in full force. Yet beyond the documented storm and disease lies a web of questions and mysteries. How did the Duc d'Anville expedition, a meticulously planned military operation, unravel so completely? Were there errors in navigation or command decisions that exacerbated the disaster? Some historians point to the inexperience of officers or the poor condition of the ships themselves as critical factors. Others speculate about possible sabotage or misfortune, so profound it seems almost supernatural. Intriguingly, The expedition's failure had significant geopolitical consequences, but its details were shrouded for years in French naval records, some of which were lost or destroyed. Was there an attempt to conceal the full extent of the catastrophe? Could there have been undisclosed skirmishes or encounters with enemy forces that compounded the fleet's woes? Or might there be undiscovered shipwrecks lying off the coasts of the Atlantic, silent witnesses to this forgotten tragedy? The human dimension of the Duc d'Anville expedition is equally haunting. Letters and journals from some survivors paint a grim picture of despair and suffering, but also of resilience and camaraderie. What thoughts must have filled the minds of those caught in the storm, watching comrades fall, facing starvation, or navigating the cold expanse of the ocean with little hope? How did the psychological weight of such loss shape their lives, if any survived to tell the tale? Even today, researchers and marine archaeologists continue to search for physical traces of the fleet's fate. Wreckage believed to belong to Duc d'Anville's ships has been found, but many mysteries remain. How many vessels were lost in the Atlantic's depths? What stories do the remains of the fleet's ships hold, locked beneath layers of sediment and sea? Can modern technology uncover more about the conditions that doomed this grand endeavor? The expedition also raises broader reflections on the limits of human ambition and the uncontrollable forces of nature. In an era when empires sought to carve the world into their domains, the ocean remained a realm of unpredictability, where even the mightiest fleets could be humbled. What lessons lie buried in the Duc d'Anville disaster about preparation, leadership, and humility in the face of the natural world? As we ponder these questions, the legacy of the Duc d'Anville expedition lingers like a ghost ship on the horizon, a reminder that not all voyages end in triumph, and not all heroes return home. The storm and sickness that claimed thousands of lives also erased their stories from many histories, leaving us to wonder what was lost in the waves and what remains waiting to be discovered. What truths might the ocean still guard, and what unknown tragedies might lie beneath its restless surface? And as we continue our exploration of vanished expeditions and lost souls, the Duc d'Anville fleet's story beckons us to look deeper, to listen closer to the whispers carried on the wind and waves, echoes of courage, calamity, and the eternal human quest to confront the unknown. As the echoes of the doomed Duc d'Anville expedition fade into the vastness of history's oceanic tragedies, our journey now turns northward to the desolate and enigmatic edges of the Arctic Ocean. Here lies a realm of ice, fog, and silence, a frozen frontier that has long challenged explorers with its deadly beauty and merciless conditions. It is in this stark, white wilderness that Eduard von Toll embarked on one of the most haunting quests in the annals of exploration: the search for the phantom Sannikov land. The year was 1900. The Arctic was no longer the wild unknown of centuries past, yet it still held secrets that defied science and reason. Eduard von Toll, a Baltic German geologist and seasoned Arctic explorer in service of the Russian Empire, was drawn to this mystery with an almost obsessive determination. Tales whispered among the native Yakut and Evenki peoples spoke of a vast land beyond the known northern archipelagos, a land of fertile plains and abundant wildlife, a place that seemed impossible amidst the endless ice. Sannikov land was first reported decades earlier by Yakov Sannikov, a Russian merchant and explorer who claimed to have sighted it from the icy shores of the New Siberian Islands. This phantom island, or perhaps archipelago, became the stuff of legend, a place that appeared on maps and in journals but stubbornly resisted verification. Many dismissed it as a mirage, a trick of the Arctic atmosphere, or simply a navigational error. Yet von Toll believed otherwise. Picture the remote New Siberian Islands. Bleak, windswept, frozen landscapes where the sun hovers low on the horizon, and the howling Arctic wind carries with it the scent of ice and ancient secrets. It was from here, aboard the sturdy ship Zarya, that von Toll and his expedition set forth into the unknown. Their mission was both scientific and speculative: to map these northern reaches, study the geology and biology, and above all, to find Sannikov land. The expedition's progress was slow and perilous. The Zarya battled through shifting sea ice, treacherous fog, and bitter cold that seeped into every bone. Yet despite the harshness, von Toll's team pressed onward, driven by a blend of scientific curiosity and the intoxicating lure of discovery. Their observations contributed significantly to Arctic science, but the Phantom Land remained elusive. Then, in 1902, von Toll made a fateful decision. Believing that Sannikov land might lie further north or northeast beyond the range of the Zarya, he left the ship with a small party to explore on foot and by sled. It was a risky gambit in a landscape that could kill with a single misstep. After this departure, von Toll and his companions vanished without a trace. Over the following years, multiple search parties attempted to locate von Toll and his men. Some wreckage and scattered relics were found on Bennett Island, part of the New Siberian archipelago, suggesting the explorers had reached at least that far. But no definitive sign of their ultimate fate ever emerged. Their disappearance became one of the Arctic's enduring mysteries, one of vanished men lost to the merciless ice and an unforgiving wilderness. What exactly happened to Eduard von Toll and his team? Did they succumb to the brutal Arctic elements, starvation, hypothermia, or accidents on unstable ice? Or is there a more enigmatic explanation? Some have speculated that von Toll might have reached Sannikov land, or something that once was, only to encounter unknown dangers. Others suggest that shifting ice and rising sea levels have since swallowed any trace of this land, that it might have been a large ice flow or a mirage mistaken for solid ground. The scientific community largely views Sannikov land as a myth or a case of optical illusion caused by atmospheric refraction, phenomena such as Fata Morgana mirages that create the illusion of distant land masses floating above the horizon. Yet the mystery endures, fueled by the Arctic's reputation as a place where reality often bends and the unknown lingers just beyond human grasp. Eduard von Toll's story also invites reflection on the human spirit and the costs of exploration. Here was a man who willingly risked, and ultimately lost, his life chasing an enigma born from hearsay and legend. Was it madness or a profound commitment to expanding human knowledge? Did he imagine Sannikov land as a last vestige of Eden, a beacon of hope in a world of ice and shadow? What dreams propelled him into the icy abyss, and what fears might have haunted him in the final days? The artifacts recovered from the expedition's last known locations, rusted equipment, frozen journals, and scattered supplies, offer tantalizing clues but no answers. The land von Toll sought, if it ever existed, has slipped through time's fingers like melting ice, leaving behind only whispers in the wind and the haunting silhouette of vanished explorers. Today, modern technology, satellite imagery, ice-penetrating radar, and deep-sea exploration has mapped the Arctic in detail previously unimaginable. Yet even with these tools, the question of Sannikov land remains unresolved. Could there be more beneath the ice? Might submerged land masses or shifting geology have played a role in the original sightings? And what else might be waiting to be discovered in these frozen wastes, still capable of confounding our understanding? Eduard von Toll's expedition is more than a story of Arctic exploration. It is a narrative that touches on themes of ambition, mystery, and the eternal human desire to reach beyond the known. In the vast silence of the polar night, the question endures. What lies beyond the horizon when the maps end and the ice reigns supreme? Did von Toll glimpse a lost world, or was his quest the final chapter in a legend born from the interplay of light, ice, and imagination? As we continue to explore these strange, unsolved journeys that ended in disappearance and death, the legacy of Eduard von Toll reminds us that the line between myth and reality is often as fragile and shifting as the Arctic ice itself. And so, the mystery of Sannikov Land remains an open invitation, a challenge to future explorers, scientists, and dreamers alike, to venture once more into the silent white vastness and seek answers that the cold Arctic wind has so far kept secret. From the frigid, silent expanse of the Arctic, our journey shifts southward, crossing vast oceans and soaring toward one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart, the trailblazing aviator who vanished over the vast Pacific Ocean, leaving behind a legacy as compelling as it is elusive. The Pacific, the world's largest and deepest ocean, is a boundless realm of turquoise waves, scattered atolls, and endless horizons. It is a place where nature's immensity dwarfs human endeavor, where even the most advanced technology can be swallowed by sudden storms or lost amidst the sparkling blue void. It was over this very ocean, on a June morning in 1937, that Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan embarked on a flight that would become one of history's most baffling disappearances. Amelia Earhart was not just an aviator, she was an icon, with a fearless spirit and a passion for flight that defied gender norms of her time. She had already broken records and shattered expectations. Her goal in 1937 was audacious: to circumnavigate the globe in a Lockheed Electra, a sleek, twin-engine plane that represented the cutting edge of aviation. The world watched as she took off from Miami, Florida, beginning a journey that promised to capture imaginations and rewrite the possibilities of human flight. Yet, as the plane crossed the vast Pacific, the story took a darker turn. After a series of successful legs, Earhart's final, most challenging leg was the flight from Lae, New Guinea, to Howland Island, a tiny speck in the ocean, barely visible even on the clearest days. This remote island was the planned refueling stop, a lifeline amid the endless blue. But Earhart and Noonan never reached it. Radio transmissions from the plane revealed their growing desperation. Earhart's voice, crackling over the airwaves, spoke of being unable to find the island, of dwindling fuel, and the encroaching possibility of a forced landing at sea. After those faint, fragmented messages, silence fell. The Electra vanished as completely as if it had been swallowed by the ocean itself. The United States launched a massive search effort, scouring hundreds of thousands of square miles of ocean, yet no trace of the plane or its occupants was found. Over time, theories emerged to fill the void left by absence. Some grounded in fact, others born of speculation and conjecture. Mainstream explanations suggest that Earhart ran out of fuel, leading to a crash somewhere near Howland Island. The vastness and depth of the Pacific made recovery impossible. The aircraft may have sunk to the ocean floor, concealed by darkness and pressure, far beyond the reach of early search technology. This scenario, while tragic, aligns with the known difficulties of navigation and communication in the era. But the mystery does not end there. Over the decades, alternative theories have emerged, each weaving its own narrative from scant evidence and tantalizing hints. One persistent hypothesis claims that Earhart and Noonan may have landed on Nikomaroro Island, part of the Phoenix Islands, nearly 400 miles southeast of Howland. This uninhabited coral atoll became the focus of numerous expeditions seeking physical evidence, artifacts like plane fragments, tools, and even skeletal remains that might link the aviators to a survival attempt on land. Could Earhart have lived as a castaway, her fate forever intertwined with the lonely shores of this remote island? Others suggest more dramatic possibilities. Stories that range from espionage and capture to secret identities and covert missions during a world on the brink of war. These theories, often fueled by gaps in the official record and the allure of conspiracy, remain speculative but reflect the powerful human need to find meaning in absence. Technological advancements have rekindled investigations into Earhart's fate with underwater sonar scans, remote sensing, and forensic analysis attempting to unravel the mystery. Yet, no definitive proof has emerged to close the case. Each new expedition reveals more of the ocean's secrets, but leaves the central question unanswered. What can we truly know about that final flight? The Electra was a marvel of its time, but the Pacific is an unforgiving expanse where weather shifts in moments, where even the most experienced pilots can become disoriented. Did a sudden storm or navigational error steer Earhart off course? Could mechanical failure or radio malfunction have doomed their attempts to communicate? And if they survived the initial crash, how long could they have endured, isolated and exposed to the elements? Amelia Earhart's story transcends the specifics of her disappearance. It is a narrative about the human drive to explore, to push boundaries, and to confront the unknown. In her quest, she challenged societal limits and soared higher than many thought possible. Yet her disappearance reminds us of the fragile line between triumph and tragedy, and how vast the world remains despite our technological advances. Her loss sparked profound cultural resonance, a symbol of courage and mystery that continues to inspire generations. Museums, books, documentaries, and countless investigations keep her memory alive, each contributing fragments to a story still incomplete. As we gaze out over the endless Pacific, imagining the plane cutting through clouds or drifting silently beneath waves, we confront the essence of mystery itself. How does one vanish in an age of radio and flight? What secrets does the ocean guard beneath its surface? And what does it mean when a world-famous explorer, a pioneer in her own right, becomes part of the very enigma she sought to unravel? The disappearance of Amelia Earhart remains an open question, a riddle cast across the horizon of history, inviting us to ponder not just what happened, but why the mystery endures. In the absence of closure, the story belongs to all who dare to look beyond the visible, to search where answers are scarce, and to accept that some truths may remain forever just out of reach. From the vast, restless waters of the Pacific where Amelia Earhart vanished into legend, we now turn northward to a landscape equally vast but infinitely colder, the Arctic. Here lies a frozen world of endless ice and shadowed silence, where the stark beauty of the polar night conceals one of the darkest and most haunting mysteries in the history of exploration, the tragic fate of the Franklin expedition. The Arctic, with its shifting pack ice, towering glaciers, and biting winds, is a place that tests the limits of human endurance. It is a realm of desolate beauty, where the sun can disappear for months, and the cold seeps into every crevice, challenging every step. It was in this forbidding environment in the mid-19th century that Sir John Franklin led one of the most ambitious, and ultimately doomed, British voyages of exploration. In 1845, Franklin set sail from England with two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terra, manned by 129 officers and crew. Their mission: to navigate and map the final uncharted sections of the Northwest Passage, a fabled maritime route through the Arctic archipelago that had eluded explorers for centuries. The expedition was outfitted with the latest technology of the time: steam engines, reinforced hulls, and stocked provisions. But the Arctic is an unforgiving adversary. For 2 years, the expedition sailed northward, entering the labyrinth of ice-bound channels and frozen seas. Then, abruptly, the ships became trapped in the relentless grip of sea ice near King William Island. The men were stranded, their fate sealed by an environment that neither man nor machine could tame. What followed is a story pieced together through fragments of evidence, skeletons discovered decades later, the diaries and notes left behind, and Inuit oral histories. It is a narrative that speaks of hardship, endurance, and a slow descent into despair. As the months turned into years, the Franklin expedition's crew faced starvation, scurvy, and the crushing weight of isolation. The harsh Arctic winter was merciless, and their supplies dwindled. Despite their efforts to trek southward on foot, few survived. What happened during those final days would only be revealed long after the ships disappeared beneath the ice. In the 1980s, forensic examinations of the remains of several crew members uncovered disturbing evidence, cut marks on bones that suggested something unthinkable: cannibalism. This grisly discovery shocked historians and the public alike, revealing the extreme desperation endured by men pushed beyond the brink of survival. The idea that British naval officers, members of one of the world's most disciplined and professional maritime forces, could resort to cannibalism was hard to reconcile with the Victorian image of stoic heroism. Yet, the physical evidence was undeniable. Were these men driven by sheer hunger, or were there other darker forces at play? Beyond the harsh realities of starvation, other perplexing elements deepen the mystery. Some researchers suggest that the expedition's provisions were contaminated by lead, stemming from poorly canned food and the ship's water systems. Lead poisoning could have impaired the crew's cognitive functions, leading to erratic behavior and making survival even more precarious. Could the effects of lead have accelerated the breakdown of order and sanity within the crew? Might it explain the reports of strange behavior recorded by Inuit witnesses, who spoke of emaciated, desperate survivors wandering the ice? Moreover, recent discoveries of the wrecks of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, found over a century and a half later beneath the Arctic waters, have opened new chapters in the investigation. The ships, remarkably preserved in the icy depths, hold secrets waiting to be uncovered, clues to the last days of the men who sailed them. What lies within those silent hulls? Are there documents, artifacts, or other evidence that could finally piece together the final moments of the expedition? Then there are the enduring enigmas surrounding the exact routes taken and the decisions made. Why did Franklin and his officers choose to abandon the ships and attempt the arduous trek south on foot? Were there missed opportunities for rescue, or decisions clouded by desperation and deteriorating health? The sparse notes and artifacts suggest a struggle between hope and despair, courage and resignation. The Inuit, who lived alongside these icy waters for generations, recounted stories of encounters with survivors, some desperate, some incoherent. These accounts challenge the official narratives and hint at survival beyond what the expedition's own records reveal. Could some have lived longer than believed? Did they assimilate or succumb in ways never documented by history? Yet, despite decades of searching, much remains unknown. The Arctic conceals its secrets beneath layers of ice and snow, resistant to discovery. The fate of the Franklin expedition is both a testament to human resilience and a grim reminder of nature's overwhelming power. What is it about this tragedy that continues to captivate us? Is it the haunting image of men lost to cold and starvation, grappling with unimaginable conditions? Or is it the puzzle itself, an intricate weave of history, science, and myth that defies complete explanation? As we look back across the icy expanse where Erebus and Terror once sailed, questions persist. Were the men of the Franklin expedition victims solely of the unforgiving environment, or did hidden forces, poisoning, psychological breakdown, and cultural clashes play roles in their demise? How much of their story will remain forever locked beneath the ice, and what might future explorations yet reveal? The legacy of the Franklin expedition is a somber echo through time, an expedition that promised discovery but ended in darkness. It asks us to consider the cost of exploration and the limits of human endurance in the face of nature's stark indifference. In the silence of the Arctic ice, where the sun rarely warms and the wind carries whispers of the past, the mystery remains alive, waiting, like the frozen ships themselves, for those who dare to uncover what lies beneath. From the frozen graveyards of the Arctic, where the Franklin expedition succumbed to ice and starvation, our story moves forward in time to another ill-fated journey, one of ambition, endurance, and a struggle against nature's indifferent fury. This is the story of the Karluk, a ship trapped, crushed, and sunk beneath the relentless Arctic ice, leaving its crew stranded in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The Arctic Ocean is a vast, shifting wilderness of ice floes and snowfields, where the very landscape is in constant motion. It is a place where summer's brief light reveals a shimmering expanse of white, and winter's darkness can swallow whole the hopes of men who dare to explore it. Here, in 1913, the Karluk set sail, carrying with it dreams of discovery, and a fate that would echo through the annals of polar exploration as one of the most harrowing maritime disasters in history. The Karluk was part of the Canadian Arctic expedition, led by Hjalmar Stephenson, a seasoned explorer whose vision was to chart unknown territories in the high north and to study the region's native peoples and wildlife. The ship itself was a former whaler, reinforced for Arctic ice, but even such preparation would prove insufficient against the forces at play. In the summer of 1913, the Karluk departed from Alaska, heading towards the Beaufort Sea and the uncharted islands of the Arctic archipelago. At first, the voyage seemed promising. The crew was in good spirits, and the ship made steady progress. But the Arctic had other plans. As autumn approached, the Karluk became trapped in fast ice, a thick, immovable mass of frozen sea that locked the ship in place. Weeks passed, and the ice did not relent. Then, in a cruel twist, the pressure of the ice crushed the hull, and the Karluk began to sink beneath the frozen surface. The crew was forced to abandon the ship, dragging their supplies onto the drifting ice floe. What followed was a desperate struggle for survival on a shifting, treacherous ice pack. The men were stranded, hundreds of miles from civilization, with little shelter against the brutal Arctic elements. Days turned into weeks, and the ice carried them further from rescue, a floating prison surrounded by endless whiteness and silence. Survival became a daily battle. The men faced starvation, frostbite, and the ever-present threat of the ice fracturing beneath their feet. They improvised shelters from salvaged materials, hunted seals and polar bears for food, and clung to the fragile hope that help would come. Yet, even as nature's harshness threatened to claim them, human endurance and ingenuity shone through. Some crew members set out on perilous journeys across the ice, seeking help, while others remained behind, bound by loyalty and the shared will to survive. The story of the Karluk is not only one of physical hardship, but also of leadership and human dynamics under extreme stress. The expedition's commander, Captain Robert Bartlett, emerged as a figure of extraordinary resilience. He undertook an epic trek over ice and snow to reach help, a journey that would become legendary in polar exploration circles. But questions remain. Could different decisions have altered the course of events? Why was the ship allowed to become trapped so late in the season, and was the risk fully understood by the expedition leaders? Some critics argue that overconfidence and a lack of preparation contributed to the disaster. Others point to the unpredictable nature of Arctic ice, an environment that defies even the best planning. Adding to the mystery are the accounts from the crew about strange noises, shifting ice patterns, and eerie atmospheric phenomena experienced during those long months on the ice. Did these events signal impending disaster, or were they simply the natural rhythms of the polar environment, misunderstood and magnified by fear and isolation? Furthermore, the fate of some crew members remains partially unresolved. While many were rescued after months of hardship, a handful vanished, swallowed by the ice or lost in the vast wilderness. Were their disappearances due solely to the elements, or did internal tensions and desperation play a role? Diaries and letters hint at moments of despair, but also camaraderie and hope, painting a complex picture of life on the ice. The Karluk's sinking and the ordeal that followed also raise questions about the broader human quest to conquer the Arctic. What drives explorers to risk everything in a place so unforgiving? Is it the allure of the unknown, the pursuit of glory, or something deeper, an intrinsic human urge to push beyond known limits, regardless of cost? Today, the remains of the Karluk rest beneath the Arctic waters, a silent witness to the expedition's tragic end. Explorers and historians continue to study the disaster, piecing together fragments of the story from ship logs, Inuit testimonies, and recovered artifacts. Each new discovery sheds light on the ordeal, but also deepens the mystery, reminding us that the Arctic holds many secrets beneath its frozen surface. What lessons does the Karluk's voyage offer to us now? Beyond the historical facts and dates lies a profound meditation on human vulnerability and resilience. The Arctic's vastness and indifference remind us that despite our technological advances, nature remains a powerful, unpredictable force. As we reflect on the fate of the Karluk and its crew, men trapped between ice and ocean, fighting for survival in a landscape of endless white, we are left with a haunting question. What still lies hidden beneath the shifting ice, waiting to be uncovered? And what stories might yet be told by the silent witnesses to that frozen nightmare? In the end, the Karluk's final voyage is a testament not only to tragedy, but to the enduring human spirit. It invites us to remember those lost in the vast Arctic wilderness and to wonder about the mysteries that the ice still guards, patiently, in its cold embrace. From the endless ice fields of the Arctic, we journey back in time and space to a different kind of frontier, a dense, whispering woodland where one of the earliest attempts at English colonization in the New World would become an enduring enigma. Here, on the rugged shores of what is now North Carolina, lies the haunting story of the Roanoke colony, a settlement that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the cryptic word, CROATOAN. The year was 1587. England, eager to stake a claim in the Americas, had sent a group of settlers across the Atlantic to establish a foothold. They arrived on Roanoke Island, a place of swaying marshes and towering trees, where the sounds of waves mingled with the calls of unfamiliar birds. It was a land both beautiful and foreboding, a land that would soon become the setting for one of history's most perplexing mysteries. The colony was led by John White, a man entrusted with the formidable task of creating a permanent English presence in the New World. His group included families, craftsmen, and soldiers, men, women, and children hoping to carve out new lives in a foreign wilderness. But within just a few months, tensions grew. Supplies dwindled. Relations with local indigenous peoples fluctuated between cautious alliance and wary distance, and the shadow of hardship loomed over the settlers. Faced with mounting difficulties, White returned to England later that year to gather more supplies and reinforcements. What followed would be a delay far longer than anyone anticipated. England's involvement in war and other pressing affairs kept White stranded across the ocean for nearly 3 years. When he finally returned to Roanoke Island in 1590, White found the settlement deserted. There were no signs of battle, no smoldering ruins, no traces of a mass exodus, only eerie silence. The fort and huts were standing, but the people were gone. The only clue left behind was the word CROATOAN, carved deeply into a post, and the letters CRO etched into a nearby tree. What did this mean? Was it a message, a warning, or simply a desperate mark left by the departing settlers? CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island, home to a Native American tribe known to the English, and some speculate it was meant as a destination or a signal. But the truth remained frustratingly out of reach. Over centuries, historians, archaeologists, and adventurers have sought answers. Some posit that the settlers integrated with the CROATOAN tribe, merging cultures and families in a peaceful but unrecorded transition. Others suggest more tragic endings: starvation, disease, or conflict leading to death and disappearance. Yet despite numerous investigations and excavations, no definitive evidence has surfaced to confirm what happened to the lost colonists. Artifacts occasionally emerge: European-style tools, fragments of pottery, but they offer tantalizing hints rather than clear proof. This mystery has sparked more speculative theories. Could the settlers have been captured or killed by rival tribes? Might they have attempted to relocate further inland, perishing in the wilderness? Some fringe ideas propose secret voyages back to Europe, or even abductions by unknown forces. While such theories remain on the edge of mainstream history, they speak to a deep human desire to fill the void where facts fall silent. The story of Roanoke raises compelling questions about early colonial encounters, how cultures met, clashed, and sometimes blended in the shadowy, untamed wilderness. It invites us to consider the fragile nature of survival on the edge of the known world, where a simple carved word becomes a cryptic testament to vanished lives. In more recent years, indigenous oral traditions have been revisited, offering alternative perspectives on the fate of the settlers. Some native communities recall tales of English newcomers who lived among them, but these accounts often conflict with written European records, highlighting the gaps in our understanding. The island itself seems to guard its secrets beneath layers of sand, soil, and salt marsh. Changing tides, erosion, and shifting landscapes complicate archaeological efforts. What once might have been a bustling outpost is now partially swallowed by the sea, blurring the boundaries between past and present. As we peer into the history of Roanoke, we encounter a story that defies closure. It is a narrative of hope turned to silence, of human endeavor caught in the unforgiving embrace of nature and circumstance. The settlers embarked on a perilous journey toward a new world, yet they vanished before their story could be fully told. The word CROATOAN remains etched in history and imagination alike, a stark, enigmatic symbol of disappearance and mystery. It asks us, what truly happened to the Roanoke settlers? Did they find refuge among the CROATOAN people, or did they succumb to the wilderness that surrounded them? Or is there some other truth, still buried beneath the marshes and trees, waiting to be uncovered? As we leave the misty shores of Roanoke behind, we carry with us the unanswered question, a reminder that history is often a puzzle incomplete, shaped as much by what is missing as by what is found. In the silence left by vanished footsteps, the mystery lingers, inviting us to wonder what stories remain hidden in the shadows of time. From the silent, wooded shores of Roanoke, we now traverse to one of the coldest, most desolate frontiers on Earth, the vast, icy wilderness of Antarctica. Here, beneath endless sheets of snow and ice, lies the story of the Belgica expedition, a voyage that began with hope and scientific ambition, but would spiral into a harrowing descent marked by isolation, despair, and a creeping madness that would leave an indelible mark on polar exploration. The year was 1897. The Belgian Antarctic expedition, led by Adrien de Gerlache aboard the ship Belgica, set out to chart unknown reaches of the southern continent. Unlike other explorers driven by national pride or conquest, this crew was united by scientific curiosity. Their mission was to study the Antarctic environment, the geology, the wildlife, the mysterious rhythms of this frozen land. They sailed into history as the first expedition to overwinter in the Antarctic, a feat fraught with unforeseen dangers. As the Belgica pushed southward through the swirling pack ice of the Bellingshausen Sea, the crew witnessed a stark and beautiful world of icebergs like ghostly cathedrals, the haunting calls of seals and penguins, and the eerie stillness of polar night. But what awaited them was not just a landscape of crystalline beauty, it was also a realm of profound isolation. As the sun dipped below the horizon for months on end, plunging the crew into endless darkness and bitter cold, the psychological weight of their predicament began to mount. Trapped in the ice, the Belgica became a drifting prison. Days blurred into weeks. The claustrophobic cold pressed on every soul aboard. Reports from the time describe how the men's spirits frayed under the relentless grip of winter's shadow. Tensions grew, tempers flared, and a sense of paranoia began to take hold. Among the crew, the ship's physician, Dr. Frederick Cook, was a pivotal figure, charged not only with tending to the men's physical health but also their mental well-being. He observed the signs of what we now recognize as polar madness or winter over syndrome: hallucinations, irrational fears, bouts of aggression, and profound depression. The symptoms were subtle at first, like the flicker of a candle struggling against an encroaching storm. But as the darkness deepened, so too did the psychological unraveling. The men reported hearing phantom noises, seeing shadows move in the corners of their vision. Some withdrew into silence, others erupted in anger seemingly without cause. The isolation was relentless, a slow erosion of sanity. Historians have long debated the causes of this descent. Some point to the obvious: the brutal conditions, the months without sunlight, the inadequate nutrition. Scurvy and vitamin deficiency were real threats. But what about the less tangible elements? Could the unyielding monotony and profound loneliness have unlocked dormant fears? Did the icy wilderness itself hold a psychological grip, its vast, empty expanse a reflection of the mind's fragile limits? Whispers from the logs hint at a crew wrestling with more than the elements. The captain, Adrien de Gerlache, battled his own demons, his authority tested by the rising tensions aboard. Some accounts suggest that in the dark, minds might have played tricks, hallucinations blending with reality, dreams bleeding into waking life. Speculative theories have even ventured further. Did exposure to the polar environment alter brain chemistry in unknown ways? Was there an intangible force within the Antarctic night that affected perception, as some early explorers believed? These ideas, while unproven, illustrate the profound mystery surrounding the mental strain of polar expeditions. The Belgica's fate was ultimately one of survival against overwhelming odds. After months trapped in ice, the crew managed a daring escape in early 1899, but the scars of their ordeal endured, both physical and psychological. Their experience became a cautionary tale for future explorers about the invisible dangers lurking not just in the environment, but within the human mind itself. Yet, despite all the recorded details, the full extent of what transpired during those dark months remains elusive. What conversations were whispered behind closed doors? What fears went unspoken in the silence of the frozen night? The personal journals of many crew members were lost or remain unpublished, leaving gaps in our understanding. As modern science attempts to unravel the phenomena of polar madness, researchers study the psychological effects of extreme isolation, insights now applied to space missions and submarine crews. But for the men aboard the Belgica, there was no preparation, no safety net. Their descent into madness was a frontier not mapped on any chart. In the end, the story of the Belgica is one of human endurance and the fragile balance between courage and vulnerability. It forces us to consider what happens when the mind confronts the unimaginable vastness of nature, extremes. Can the human spirit fully withstand the cold embrace of such isolation? Or does it fracture in ways we still cannot fully comprehend? As the Antarctic ice continues to hold its secrets, the shadow of the Belgica lingers, a reminder that exploration is not only a journey into the unknown lands, but into the uncharted territories of the human psyche. What exactly transpired in those frozen months of darkness? What echoes of fear and hope remain trapped beneath the ice, waiting for us to listen? The mystery persists, as silent and vast as the Antarctic itself, inviting us to wonder about the unseen forces that shaped one of history's strangest and most haunting expeditions. From the frigid silence of Antarctica's endless ice to the turquoise mystery of the Atlantic Ocean, our journey takes us next to one of the most enduring maritime enigmas of the 20th century, the unexplained disappearance of the USS Cyclops in the notorious Bermuda Triangle. Picture the vast expanse of the Atlantic, where the deep blue waters shimmer under a relentless sun, stretching between the eastern coast of the United States and the scattered islands of the Caribbean. It is here, amid these seemingly idyllic waves, that a puzzle of loss and vanished lives has confounded experts and inspired legends for over a century. The USS Cyclops was no ordinary ship. Commissioned in 1910, she was a massive Navy collier, designed to carry coal and vital supplies to fuel the U.S. fleet. At over 500 feet long and capable of transporting thousands of tons of cargo, she was one of the largest non-combatant vessels of her time. Despite her immense size and strength, her fate remains one of the greatest mysteries in maritime history. In March 1918, as World War I raged on distant fronts, the Cyclops departed from the naval base at Barbados bound for Baltimore, Maryland. Her mission was routine: transport a heavy load of manganese ore, essential for steel production, to support the war effort. On board were 309 men, sailors, officers, and civilians, all unaware that this voyage would be their last. As the ship set sail into the warm Atlantic waters, the world was already in turmoil, but the sea was calm, and the journey seemed unremarkable. Yet what happened next remains shrouded in uncertainty. The Cyclops never reached Baltimore. She simply vanished. No distress calls were sent. No wreckage was recovered. The last known communication was a routine message confirming departure, after which all contact ceased. Search efforts spanned thousands of square miles, involving the U.S. Navy and private entities, but no trace of the ship or her crew was ever found. The Cyclops seemed to have disappeared as if swallowed by the sea itself. The immediate aftermath was confusion and disbelief. How could such a large vessel vanish without a trace? Given the era's technology, radios were unreliable but still effective in emergencies. Why was no SOS broadcast? What force or event could overcome the Cyclops so completely and so suddenly? Over the years, historians and maritime experts have put forward numerous explanations. Some suggest structural failure. The Cyclops was heavily laden, perhaps overloaded with manganese ore, possibly affecting her stability. There were reports from previous voyages about engine troubles and mechanical issues. Could a catastrophic structural collapse or flooding have doomed the ship? Others point to natural hazards. The Bermuda Triangle, roughly defined by points at Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, is infamous for sudden storms, rogue waves, and powerful underwater currents. Was the Cyclops caught in a violent squall, overwhelmed by a rogue wave that smashed her decks and dragged her beneath the surface? Then there are more curious and speculative ideas. Some maritime folklorists link the Cyclops' disappearance to the strange reputation of the Bermuda Triangle, where countless vessels and aircraft are said to have mysteriously vanished. Is there an unknown force at play, a magnetic anomaly, a sudden shifting of the seabed, or even otherworldly phenomena that confounds navigation and communication? Interestingly, the Cyclops was not the only ship to vanish in this area around that time. Sister ships of the same class and era also suffered similar fates, fueling speculation about design flaws or a curse. The heavy manganese ore cargo has been proposed as a destabilizing factor, causing the ship's center of gravity to shift dangerously. Even decades later, wreckage purported to be from the Cyclops surfaced in various locations, but none could be conclusively identified. Oceanographers and underwater explorers have mapped portions of the triangle's seabed, revealing underwater canyons, volcanic formations, and deep trenches, treacherous terrain that could conceal lost ships forever. Yet, despite modern sonar and deep-sea submersibles, the Cyclops remains elusive. No definitive evidence has emerged to confirm the exact cause or location of her sinking. Unlike some shipwrecks whose remains tell stories of storm or fire, the Cyclops leaves only questions. What was the last moment like aboard the Cyclops? Did the crew face a sudden disaster, leaving no time for distress signals? Were they victims of nature's wrath? Or is there something deeper, more enigmatic at work? Could there have been human factors? Some historians speculate about sabotage, espionage, or even mutiny, given the strategic value of the ship's cargo during wartime. Yet no solid proof has ever surfaced to support such theories. The mystery also touches on the human psyche. How do we reconcile the cold facts with the tales of ghost ships and disappearances in this region? What is it about the Bermuda Triangle that has captured imaginations and seeded suspicion? In the end, the disappearance of the USS Cyclops is a haunting reminder of the ocean's vast, unknowable power. For a ship so large, with hundreds of lives aboard, to vanish without a trace is a sobering testament to the fragile line between mastery and vulnerability at sea. And so, the Cyclops drifts in memory, a spectral vessel in the deep, its story blending fact and mystery. What secrets lie in the dark Atlantic depths? What truths await discovery beneath the shifting waves? The answers remain hidden, beckoning explorers, historians, and dreamers alike to search the endless blue for clues, and to ponder the silent fate of the ship lost in the Bermuda Triangle. The ocean stretches endlessly into the horizon, dark, cold, and merciless. Far off the western coast of Scotland, where the North Atlantic swells crash with relentless fury, lie the Flannan Isles, a jagged cluster of rocky islets battered by salt and wind. This desolate outpost is home to a lone sentinel, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, a steadfast beacon meant to guide sailors through these treacherous waters. Yet, despite its purpose, this isolated lighthouse holds a secret as cold and impenetrable as the sea itself. It is a place where 3 lighthouse keepers vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a chilling silence that still echoes through the ages. The story begins on a bleak December day in 1900. The lighthouse was manned by 3 experienced keepers, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, tasked with tending the light through winter storms and long, lonely nights. This was a routine posting, demanding but straightforward, with the harsh Atlantic serving as their constant companion. But when a relief vessel arrived on December 26th, the island was eerily deserted. No sign of the men greeted the crew. The lighthouse doors were secured, the beds undisturbed, meals left untouched. The logbook entries abruptly ended 3 days prior, on December 15th. What could have happened in this isolated place, miles from the nearest shore, to cause the disappearance of 3 men, without struggle, without distress, without a trace? The relief crew's investigation uncovered a few unsettling clues. 1 keeper's oilskins, heavy protective gear essential for facing the tempestuous sea, were missing. The lighthouse lamp was operational, the equipment intact. A chair was overturned, a clock stopped, and one of the stone staircases showed signs of recent use. There were no footprints leading away from the island on the rocky shore, but an open gate suggested someone might have left in haste. Official inquiry followed, combing through witness testimonies and maritime records, yet it yielded little certainty. Some speculated a violent storm had struck, sweeping the men into the sea while performing maintenance outside. But weather logs indicated calmer conditions on those days, conditions unlikely to claim all 3 men at once. Others considered the possibility of an accident. Perhaps one keeper had fallen while securing a gear, his companions attempting rescue, only for tragedy to claim them all. Yet no bodies were ever found despite exhaustive searches. More puzzling still, locals whispered of strange lights flickering around the island, odd noises carried on the wind, and an uncanny stillness that blanketed the isles afterward. Was the sea the only force at work? Or was there something more enigmatic at play, something that defies simple explanation? In the years that followed, the mystery deepened. The lighthouse was rebuilt, technology advanced, and yet the disappearance of the Flannan keepers remained a haunting enigma. Books, articles, and films speculated on the fate of Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur. Some invoked supernatural causes, a curse, malevolent spirits, or ancient sea gods exacting vengeance. Others posited psychological breakdowns triggered by isolation, leading to tragic outcomes. The notion of isolation itself invites reflection. Imagine spending weeks, even months, confined to a remote rock, surrounded by the roar of waves and the howling wind, cut off from all human contact except your 2 colleagues. How might such extreme solitude affect the mind? Could fear and paranoia have driven the men into desperate actions? Yet the evidence tells a quieter story, one of a natural environment harsh beyond measure, where a single misstep could be fatal, and where the ocean claims its due silently and without mercy. Could there have been a sudden, localized weather event? An unexpected rogue wave or a freak tide, catching the men off guard during an essential task? Or perhaps a structural failure on the precarious cliffs, causing the men to fall into the sea below? But then, why was there no sign of struggle? No traces of bodies, no wreckage? This silence is perhaps the most unsettling aspect. In a world so well mapped and monitored today, the complete disappearance of 3 experienced men in full view of the lighthouse remains baffling. The Flannan Isles lighthouse stands still, its light cutting through fog and storm, a beacon against the darkness. Yet it guards a secret far older and deeper than its stone walls, an unspoken testament to the sea's capacity to swallow stories whole. What really happened to the keepers of the Flannan Isles? Were they victims of nature's indiscriminate wrath, or did the island itself harbor something more sinister, something that has never been fully understood? As we consider this remote outpost and the vanishing of its guardians, we are reminded that some mysteries lie not in the absence of evidence, but in the quiet persistence of the unknown. In the end, the Flannan Isles keep their secrets tightly, and we are left to wonder, amid the crashing waves and the endless sky, what still waits hidden just beyond the light's reach. From the sprawling expanse of the Ural Mountains in the far reaches of the Soviet Union emerges a landscape as unforgiving as it is beautiful. The region's jagged ridges, cloaked in endless snow and ice, have long been a testament to nature's indifferent majesty. In the heart of this frozen wilderness lies a remote mountain pass, now forever etched into history, not for its grandeur, but for the chilling enigma that unfolded there in the winter of 1959. This place, known simply as Dyatlov Pass, would become synonymous with one of the most baffling and tragic mysteries of the 20th century. It was here that 9 experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, disappeared under circumstances that have since defied explanation. What began as a routine trek for these students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute ended in an ordeal marked by fear, confusion, and death. The initial discovery sent shockwaves through the mountaineering community and the world at large. When search parties found the group's tent, it was slashed open from the inside, a desperate and inexplicable act. The hikers had fled into the harsh Siberian night, inadequately dressed for the brutal cold, some even barefoot. Why abandon shelter in such a hostile environment? What unseen terror forced them to tear their way out and scatter into the wilderness? As rescuers ventured further into the snow-covered forest, they uncovered a scene growing more disturbing with every step. The bodies were found at varying distances, some huddled beneath a tree, others caught in the snowdrifts miles away. The injuries they bore deepened the mystery: fractured skulls, broken ribs, and, in one case, a crushed chest. Yet, strikingly, these wounds bore no signs of external trauma consistent with a fight or animal attack. What could cause such devastating injuries without a clear source? The official Soviet investigation cited an unknown compelling force as the cause of death, but left much unsaid. The case files were sealed, and the answers seemed to slip through the fingers of investigators and experts alike. Over the decades, numerous theories have emerged, some grounded in science and others bordering on speculation. One prominent explanation suggests that a small avalanche or a sudden release of snow and ice forced the hikers from their tent in a panic, yet the evidence for such an avalanche remains ambiguous. The topography and snow conditions that night do not clearly support the hypothesis. Why then would the hikers scatter in different directions, some removing their clothes in the biting cold? Hypothermia experts point to the phenomenon of paradoxical undressing, when victims of extreme cold remove their clothing due to confusion or a burning sensation as their body shuts down. But this explains only part of the puzzle. Why did some suffer severe blunt force injuries, inconsistent with falling or slipping? Then there are the less conventional theories. Some researchers propose that the hikers encountered secret military tests, perhaps involving novel weapons or parachute mines, causing panic and injury. Witnesses reported seeing strange orange lights in the sky around the time of the incident, fueling these suspicions. Could the Soviet military have concealed the true nature of what transpired? Other voices speculate on infrasound-induced panic. Certain wind conditions can create low-frequency sounds below the threshold of human hearing, triggering feelings of terror and irrational flight responses. Is it possible the mountains themselves conjured a natural psychological trap? More fringe ideas delve into the realms of cryptids or extraterrestrial encounters, tales of mysterious creatures stalking the snowy wilds or unexplained aerial phenomena. While these accounts captivate the imagination, they remain unsubstantiated by hard evidence. Adding further complexity, modern investigations have detected traces of radiation on some of the hikers' clothing. What is the significance of this finding? Was it contamination from environmental sources, or evidence of something more secretive? As the years pass, technology offers new methods to analyze the case. Digital reconstructions, forensic advancements, even satellite imagery. Yet the core questions persist. What precisely caused the hikers to flee their tent into the freezing night? How did such severe injuries occur without witnesses or clear signs of conflict? And why have these questions remained unanswered despite decades of scrutiny? The Dyatlov Pass incident is a stark reminder of the profound vulnerability of humans against the vast, indifferent forces of nature, and perhaps against unknown dangers lurking in the shadows of history. The Ural Mountains, silent and stoic, guard their secrets tightly beneath layers of ice and snow. What truly happened on that fateful night? Was it a tragic accident compounded by environmental hazards and human error? Or did something altogether stranger and more inexplicable unfold in the dark wilderness? As we reflect on the silent footprints, the torn canvas, and the frozen bodies scattered in the snow, we are left with more questions than answers. questions that echo through the years like the biting Siberian wind. What lies hidden beneath the cold, white veil of Dyatlov Pass? And will the truth ever fully emerge from the shadows of this haunting mystery? From the silent shadows on Christmas Eve, where the Dyatlov hikers vanished, we now step away from the icy tundra to a quiet homestead in Fayetteville, West Virginia, where the warmth of holiday cheer gave way to chilling uncertainty in a fire that swallowed more than just flame. The Sodder children's disappearance remains one of America's most haunting and unresolved mysteries. It's December 24th, 1945. The Sodder family, George, Jenny, and their 10 children, celebrate the holiday with laughter and anticipation. The fire is lit, the stockings are hung, and the youngest children, the 5 who never returned, stay up past bedtime, toys in hand. The house, a modest 2-story wooden frame, sits quietly in the winter's stillness, poised on the edge of warmth and dark. At around 1 a.m., Jenny is roused by the faint crackle of a wrong-number phone call, just laughter and glass clinking in the background. A strange prelude, she thinks, before drifting back to sleep. Soon after, a thud rolls across the roof. A few minutes later, smoke drifts through the home's upper halls. The fire has begun. George and Jenny gather their surviving 4 children and escape the inferno. The staircase to the upper bedrooms is already engulfed. George attempts to reach his missing children with a ladder, only the ladder is gone. His trucks, reliable earlier in the day, won't start. He tries climbing through a window, brushing against rescuers in his desperation. The fire department, hampered by staffing and communication failures, doesn't arrive until dawn. At that point, the house has collapsed in ashes. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, they never emerged. No bodies, no remains, nothing, not even the smallest bones. Yet, curiously, at the center of the house, the Christmas lights still glow and the curtains remain drawn. Small details out of place in what was labeled an accidental fire. Was the cause electrical, as the investigators concluded? Or was something else responsible? Holes in the official narrative soon emerged. A phone line was discovered deliberately cut, not burned, suggesting sabotage rather than an electrical fault. The missing ladder, critical in George's rescue attempts, was found discarded 75 feet away in an embankment, as if intentionally removed. A stranger had been seen near the house that night, parked along the highway. A local claimed to have seen balls of fire thrown at the home before the blaze, an uncanny image suggesting arson. Searches did uncover bone fragments, but forensic evaluation revealed they belonged to a much older individual and were likely contaminated debris, raising questions about credibility, contamination, or worse. Despite official closure, George and Jenny never accepted the verdict. They erected billboards along Route 16 with images of their missing children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, Betty, seeking any trace that could explain their fate. They followed up on countless tips, sightings around the country, a mysterious photograph mailed to them years later, even rumors of Italian orphanages, yet none yielded answers. Possible explanations drift between the probable and the hauntingly speculative. Some insist it was an electrical fire, tragic and final. Yet this theory is undermined by the cut phone line and the unlikely survival of certain areas of the house. Others suspect a kidnapping followed by arson, a deliberate cover-up. George's vocal criticism of Mussolini, shared within the Italian immigrant community, led some to suspect political retaliation. Could the children have been taken in an act of revenge? Or sold into trafficking, their fate sealed under assumed identities? The trucks? Disabled. The ladder? Removed. The call? Misdialed? Or a cover? Even the fire itself seemed selective. These details led the Sodders to believe not in coincidence, but orchestration. There were theories involving human trafficking rings and theories involving cover-ups. Rumors that the children were spotted years later at a convent. A woman in Charleston claimed she'd seen them with unfamiliar adults. Years after the fire, a photo arrived in the mail, unsigned. It showed a young man resembling Louis, now grown. But the trail went cold. Decades passed. George died still searching. Jenny wore black for the rest of her life. The billboard, for years a fixture of Appalachian roadside mystery, finally came down in the 1980s. The case has never been officially reopened, and still, the questions remain. Could 5 children vanish in the middle of the night without a trace? Could a fire erase every bone, every button, every piece of evidence when forensic analysis suggests otherwise? Or was something else at work? The Sodder children's disappearance touches something raw and profound. The tenderness of parenthood and the horror of unanswered loss. It asks us how grief shapes reality, and if in some corners of history, the only certainty is the silence left behind. Was this a tragic accident amplified in confusion? Or something darker, hidden beneath the ashes of Christmas Eve? The house is gone. The children were never found. The roadside billboard is gone now too, but the question remains etched in memory. Where are Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty? What truly happened that Christmas night? And why has the world still not answered? The mystery endures, reminding us that some stories refuse to be put out, vanishing, yet ever present. The southernmost continent, an endless sea of ice and snow, remains one of the last truly unexplored places on Earth, a land that swallows the unwary, erases the careless, and leaves little behind but ghostly echoes of those who dared challenge its desolate, frozen expanse. The Antarctic, where time itself seems to stand still, its winds and blizzards having wiped away countless stories. But some, despite the howling storms, refuse to be forgotten. One of those stories, though told many times, still holds a sense of mystery, a sense of a journey that could never quite reach its destination. The Shackleton Nimrod expedition, launched in 1907, was intended to carve its name into the annals of exploration history. Yet, instead of triumph, it left behind a tale of near success, of death and suffering, of a failure that feels as much a part of the legend as any achievement. The expedition was led by Sir Ernest Shackleton, a man whose name would later be synonymous with extraordinary endurance. Shackleton was no stranger to the perils of the polar regions. His earlier expeditions had already exposed him to the punishing cold and the constant battle for survival in these hostile environments. But in 1907, his goal was clear: to become the first man to reach the South Pole. Shackleton's team, aboard the Nimrod, would be one of the first to truly test the limits of human endurance in Antarctica. Their journey began in early 1907, when the Nimrod set sail from New Zealand, carrying Shackleton, his crew, and a wealth of scientific equipment. The vessel, though a sturdy ship for its time, was no match for the crushing ice that lay ahead. As they neared the Antarctic coast, the crew began to prepare for the real test, the arduous trek across the ice sheet, a journey that would take them deep into the frozen wilderness, far beyond the reach of civilization. Shackleton and his team, including the famous explorer Frank Wild, set out from the coast with high hopes, equipped with sleds, dogs, and provisions to sustain them through the harsh months ahead. They crossed the barren ice fields, their bodies weakening under the constant cold, their spirits tested by the grinding isolation. But they pressed on. The men, though struggling, knew that they were on the edge of something monumental. And yet, despite their best efforts, the expedition's final push would never reach the pole. They came within a mere 97 nautical miles, just over a week's journey, before Shackleton was forced to turn back. The reasons for their failure were clear. The conditions were worse than expected, their supplies were dwindling, and the journey had taken a greater toll on them physically than they had anticipated. But even more mysterious than these obstacles was the fact that Shackleton had decided to retreat before any disaster struck. They were only days away from their goal, yet he knew that to continue would have been suicidal. But why, after coming so close, did Shackleton turn back? Was it caution, as history suggests, or did something more unspoken linger behind that decision? Historians often point to Shackleton's leadership as the defining factor in the survival of the expedition. His decision to turn back, despite the pole being so tantalizingly close, was seen as the wisest choice, given the danger and their dwindling resources. But as we peel back the layers of this story, a different picture begins to form. Shackleton's caution may have been the only reason that any of his men survived. Had they gone further, perhaps all would have perished, lost to the ice, never to be found. But even with this pragmatic retreat, the crew's return was anything but safe. The Nimrod had become trapped in the ice, and the crew was forced to survive in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. The return journey to the coast and ultimately to safety was a nightmare of exhaustion, hunger, and peril. Shackleton's men struggled to navigate their way back, with several falling ill from the brutal conditions. The worst of the suffering occurred on the return journey, when the men were forced to cross vast stretches of unmapped ice, with no hope of immediate rescue. The physical toll on the men was incalculable. At one point, the team's medical officer, Dr. Alexander Macklin, was forced to make a grim decision when the first signs of frostbite set in. Shackleton's group had to amputate toes and fingers, a reminder of the brutal reality of polar exploration, where even the smallest injury could mean death. It was a harrowing experience, and many of the men emerged from it mentally scarred, with their spirits battered by the relentless hardship. Yet despite all this, Shackleton was able to bring his men back alive. His leadership, while questioned in the aftermath, was ultimately hailed as remarkable, especially in light of the grueling conditions they faced. And yet, as the men boarded the Nimrod and sailed back to New Zealand, one question lingered. What exactly had they achieved? They had failed to reach the South Pole, an ambitious goal no doubt, but they had survived. In many ways, their return was the true victory, a victory in the face of overwhelming odds. But there are parts of the story that have never sat well with some. Despite Shackleton's leadership and determination, one part of the expedition remains shrouded in ambiguity: the fate of the Nimrod. The ship, which had been the expedition's lifeline, seemed to disappear without a trace after the men left Antarctica. What happened to the ship? Was it scuttled for safety, or did it become trapped in the ice, left to slowly succumb to the relentless cold? Some theorize that the ship was lost to the same forces of nature that had tried to destroy the crew, a casualty of the unforgiving Antarctic ice. Others have wondered about Shackleton's own mindset as he led his men back. Was he haunted by the near miss? Did the failure weigh heavily on him, or did he simply move on, focusing instead on the survival of his crew? The men who made it back to New Zealand spoke of Shackleton's calm demeanor, his focus on keeping morale high, and his ability to inspire his crew even in the darkest moments. But even in their accounts, something was left unsaid, as if Shackleton had buried a deeper, unspoken feeling beneath his public composure. And what of the men who never made it back? The members of the crew who had been lost in the ice, their names slowly forgotten as the years passed. Was it a quiet death from exhaustion and cold, or had something else played a role in their disappearance? There were whispers of strange happenings during the journey, of eerie lights seen in the distance during the long nights, or of inexplicable phenomena observed by the men as they crossed the ice. Yet none of these stories were ever fully explored. Were they simply the byproducts of tired minds, of men stretched to their limits? Or was there something truly unusual about the region they were in? something that has yet to be understood. Shackleton's Nimrod expedition, in the end, remains a story of near success and extreme survival, but it is also a story of lingering questions, of what might have been, of what truly happened beyond the facts we know. The mystery of the Nimrod, of the lost ship, of the unspoken fears that must have haunted Shackleton and his crew still echoes through the icy wilderness of Antarctica. As the decades pass, Shackleton's achievement has been overshadowed by his later, more famous exploits, the ill-fated Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, for example. Yet the Nimrod expedition and its untold mysteries continue to remain on the fringes, waiting for new eyes to revisit the evidence, to uncover the truths that still lie buried beneath the snow and ice of the South Pole. What exactly did the crew encounter on their journey? What secrets, if any, did they leave behind? In the frozen, silent vastness of Antarctica, perhaps some things will remain beyond the reach of even the most intrepid explorers. What was Shackleton's greatest challenge? Survival, or something else entirely? Some stories are so strange, so unsettling, that they blur the lines between history and myth, fact and fiction. One such story is that of the SS Orang Medan, a ship whose fate has remained shrouded in mystery for decades. The mere mention of its name conjures eerie images of a silent vessel adrift in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, its crew frozen in an eternal moment of terror. In June of 1947, something inexplicable occurred on the waters off the coast of Indonesia. A distress signal was received by nearby ships, originating from a vessel simply known as the Orang Medan. The message, cryptic and chilling, was brief, but its content has remained etched in the annals of maritime folklore. The radio operator of the Orang Medan reportedly sent out a transmission saying, "All officers, including the captain, are dead. Lying in the chart room and on the bridge. Possibly the whole crew is dead." Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the message cut off, leaving a silence that has since haunted many who have looked into the strange fate of the ship. The location of the Orang Medan was within the shipping lanes of the Strait of Malacca, a region known for its treacherous waters and a history steeped in both ancient trade routes and modern piracy. Ships moving through this area are often on high alert, and the sudden call for help from a nearby vessel was met with immediate concern. A nearby American ship, the Silver Star, responded quickly to the distress call, moving toward the coordinates indicated by the Orang Medan's radio operator. As the Silver Star neared the location of the Orang Medan, they sighted the vessel adrift, its sails limp against the horizon and the hull eerily still. The Orang Medan appeared completely undamaged. There were no signs of battle, no evidence of a collision or storm damage, and the ship was otherwise intact. But what the crew of the Silver Star found when they boarded the vessel has never been fully explained. Upon stepping aboard the Orang Medan, the first thing that greeted the rescuers was a scene of utter horror. The entire crew, with no exceptions, were dead. But the circumstances of their deaths were far from ordinary. All of the bodies were found in grotesque positions, with their faces contorted in expressions of abject terror. Eyes wide open, mouths gaping as if in a final scream, their bodies stiffened in the unnatural rigor mortis of sudden death. They were found sprawled on the deck, in the engine room, and in the various sections of the ship. Some were even positioned upright in their chairs, as if still standing at their posts, yet all were lifeless. The most unnerving part of this discovery, however, was the absence of any visible cause of death. There were no signs of physical trauma, no wounds, no burns, no poisoning. It seemed as though the crew had died almost instantaneously, yet the cause was unclear. Even more peculiar was the fact that some of the crew members' bodies were found in strange positions, and their eyes were described as wide open, as if locked in a final expression of terror. a detail that would haunt anyone who heard the story. As the Silver Star's crew attempted to investigate further, an even greater mystery unfolded. While the ship was found eerily silent, save for the faint hum of machinery still running, the radio equipment on board seemed to be intact. The only clue that remained aside from the chilling message was a faint, ghostly odor, though no one could place its source. With the bodies aboard and the unsettling silence all around, the decision was made to tow the Orang Medan back to port. But this is where the story takes yet another strange turn. As the ship was being towed, an explosion suddenly rocked the Orang Medan. The Silver Star was forced to cut its tow line, and the ship was lost to the sea in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the Orang Medan was gone, disappearing into the ocean, its mystery undisturbed by any further investigation. The story of the SS Orang Medan has since become the stuff of legend, whispered about in maritime circles and covered by curious journalists, but the facts remain elusive. Various theories have been put forward to explain what might have occurred on that ill-fated voyage. Some suggest that the crew fell victim to a gas leak, perhaps carbon monoxide or some other toxic substance that could have been emitted from the ship's engine or cargo. This theory would explain the sudden deaths, but it doesn't account for the unnatural expressions on the crew's faces or the strange lack of any visible injuries. Others speculate that the crew may have been exposed to some form of weapon or poison, though again, the absence of any external signs of violence makes this theory hard to prove. A more fringe theory involves the idea of an unknown or experimental weapon. Some have even linked the incident to secret wartime experiments, though there is no direct evidence to support this. Another possibility, and one that has caught the imagination of many, is that the Orang Medan was cursed or haunted. The ghost ship theory suggests that something supernatural may have been at play. After all, why did the crew of the Orang Medan react so violently? And why was the ship destroyed so suddenly without any clear reason? The idea of an angry spirit or malevolent force lurking aboard the vessel is certainly unsettling, but such theories remain, for the most part, speculative at best. But there is a far simpler yet equally chilling interpretation. Some believe that the deaths aboard the Orang Medan could have been the result of a tragic accident that spiraled out of control, a series of misfortunes that led to the deaths of the crew and the mysterious explosion. Could it have been an electrical malfunction, or a fire below deck that led to the release of dangerous fumes? The explosion that destroyed the ship could have been a result of a delayed chain reaction, perhaps triggered by the presence of flammable materials or an unstable cargo. Despite the countless theories and potential explanations, no definitive answer has ever been found. The SS Orang Medan remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the sea. While some suggest that it was simply a tragic accident, others remain convinced that there are elements of the story that defy rational explanation. What caused the crew's terror? What happened to the ship after the radio transmission was cut off? Why was it lost without a trace? Perhaps the most unsettling part of the mystery is the lack of concrete evidence. No photographs of the ship or the bodies, no survivors to tell the tale, and no records that can definitively explain the events. It remains a story passed down by word of mouth, a tale of the unknown that continues to evoke fear and wonder. What happened on the Orang Medan? Was it the result of a natural disaster, a malfunction, or something far more mysterious? Could the truth lie hidden in the deep waters of the Pacific, locked away in a ship that will never be found again? In the eerie quiet of the ocean, where the waves roll and the wind howls, perhaps the SS Orang Medan still drifts, waiting to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to seek them. Or perhaps, like so many ghost ships before it, the mystery will remain unsolved, a dark chapter in maritime history, forever lost to the depths. In the high Arctic, where the sun lingers at the horizon for weeks at a time, and the icy wind sweeps endlessly over a landscape both magnificent and desolate. The silence is broken only by the crack of shifting ice or the distant call of seabirds. It is a world that resists human presence, a place where survival depends on calculation, caution, and an almost instinctive respect for the forces of nature. Yet, in the summer of 1897, 3 men dared to confront this frozen wilderness not on foot, nor by ship, but by air, suspended beneath a balloon of silk and hydrogen, drifting toward what they hoped would be eternal glory. This was the André Arctic Balloon Expedition, a journey conceived not as a desperate act of survival, but as an ambitious leap forward in human ingenuity and exploration. It was led by Salomon August André, a Swedish engineer and national hero whose vision was bold, daring, and, as many would later argue, fatally flawed. André's dream was simple in its outline, yet breathtaking in its audacity: to be the first to reach the North Pole by balloon. He believed that by harnessing the winds, his expedition could soar gracefully over the vast ice fields, avoiding the grueling marches and the deadly traps that had swallowed so many expeditions before his. His plan was celebrated across Europe, hailed as the very embodiment of modern progress. Sweden, eager to cement its place among the great exploring nations of the era, embraced the idea wholeheartedly. The balloon itself, christened Örnen, or the Eagle, was a massive creation of varnished silk, painstakingly designed to hold hydrogen for weeks at a time. It was outfitted with ropes that dangled into the ice below, intended to act as stabilizers and to steer, in theory, the otherwise unsteerable craft. The gondola beneath was stocked with food, scientific instruments, hunting rifles, sledges, and even pigeons that would carry messages back to civilization. To many, it seemed almost futuristic, a marriage of science, ambition, and national pride. But as André and his companions, Niels Strindberg, a young physicist and photographer, and Knut Frankel, an engineer, prepared for their ascent from the island of Donskoy, north of Svalbard, doubts began to emerge. The very design of the balloon had weaknesses. It leaked hydrogen far more quickly than expected. The ropes dragged more heavily than planned, slowing their progress. And perhaps most concerning of all, the winds of the Arctic are notoriously unpredictable. They shift without warning, and once airborne, the explorers would have little control over where they were carried. Still, on July 11, 1897, with dignitaries watching and cameras recording, the Eagle lifted into the gray Arctic sky. The balloon rose slowly, its ropes scraping across the ice before finally breaking free. The men on the ground cheered, while those aboard waved. In that moment, it must have felt as though destiny itself was within reach. But almost immediately, things began to go wrong. The ropes, rather than stabilizing the balloon, dragged heavily against the ice, tearing free vital equipment and slowing the ascent. Within 2 days, the Eagle began to lose hydrogen at an alarming rate. By the 3rd day, the dream of soaring gracefully to the pole was gone. The balloon sagged, finally crashing onto the pack ice hundreds of miles from their starting point. What had been envisioned as a triumphant aerial voyage was transformed into a grueling trek across shifting, unforgiving ice floes. The 3 men were stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth, with no hope of rescue. André, Strindberg, and Frankel had no choice but to begin the long march southward, hauling their supplies on sledges, battling exhaustion, frostbite, and the ever-present threat of starvation. They hunted seals and polar bears, supplementing their dwindling stores. Strindberg, despite the misery, continued to document their journey with photographs, images that would later become haunting relics of their fate. For months they endured, pushing themselves across the drifting ice. Their diaries reveal moments of determination, flashes of optimism, but also growing despair as the reality of their predicament set in. By October, they reached White Island, Viton, a barren, windswept outcrop in the Svalbard archipelago. Here, the trail of the expedition goes cold. For over 3 decades, the fate of the Andrée expedition remained one of the Arctic's most enduring mysteries. Their disappearance fueled speculation and rumor. Some believed they had perished quietly on the ice, their remains swallowed by the shifting floes. Others imagined more dramatic endings, a final stand against a polar bear, or a desperate attempt to launch the balloon once more. In Sweden, André's name became both a source of national pride and of nagging unease. Had he been a visionary undone by cruel chance, or a reckless dreamer who had led his companions to a needless death? Then, in 1930, the mystery resurfaced. A Norwegian scientific expedition landed on White Island and stumbled upon a campsite, eerily preserved in the permafrost. Scattered across the ground were remnants of tents, cooking pots, notebooks, and photographic plates. And then, the bones. The remains of André, Strindberg, and Frankel were discovered, lying where they had fallen over 30 years before. The diaries found at the site offered a fragmentary but haunting account of their final weeks. Entries described the struggle against shifting ice, the difficulty of hunting in worsening conditions, and the relentless fatigue. The last entries, dated October 1897, ended abruptly. The photographs recovered, some of which survived development, showed the men dragging their sledges across the desolation, their faces weary but determined. These were not mere explorers. They were witnesses to their own slow decline. And yet, even with the discovery of their remains, the story of the Andrée expedition has never felt fully resolved. The cause of their deaths remains uncertain. Some argue they succumbed simply to exhaustion, hunger, and exposure, the inevitable outcome of being stranded in such a place. Others suggest they may have been poisoned by eating polar bear meat tainted with trichinosis, a parasite known to infest Arctic animals. Still others note the presence of high levels of lead in their remains, speculating that their tinned food may have slowly poisoned them, clouding their judgment and weakening their bodies. But there are stranger theories still. Some point to unexplained details in the diaries, sudden gaps, ambiguous phrasing, as signs that something more mysterious unfolded on White Island. Were the men victims of an accident never recorded? Did interpersonal conflict play a role in their demise? And why, after all their struggles, did they appear to have abandoned some supplies that might have extended their survival? One particularly unsettling idea is that the expedition was doomed not merely by poor planning or bad luck, but by a kind of curse, whether metaphorical or otherwise. To their supporters, the expedition had been a symbol of modern progress, of humanity's ability to conquer nature. But the Arctic has always resisted such arrogance. Time and again, explorers who approached it with overconfidence have been humbled or destroyed. Was André's balloon truly a technological marvel, or was it always destined to be torn apart by the winds, a fragile dream crushed by the indifference of the ice? Others take an even more speculative path, suggesting that the men may have encountered something in the Arctic that defies explanation. Strange lights in the polar sky, auroras, or something more? A disorienting madness induced by isolation and cold? Legends of the far north often speak of landscapes that shift, of mirages and illusions that lure travelers astray. Could such phenomena have played a role in the final days of André, Strindberg, and Frankel? Even the balloon itself remains a kind of ghost in the story. The eagle was never seen again. Did it collapse onto the ice, shredded and forgotten? Or could fragments of it still lie buried in the frozen wastes, waiting for another expedition to stumble upon them? Today, the artifacts recovered from White Island rest in museums in Sweden, displayed as both relics of heroism and reminders of hubris. Visitors gaze upon the sledges, the cooking stoves, the cameras that recorded those haunting final photographs. But objects alone cannot resolve the deeper mystery. They cannot tell us what passed through the minds of the three men as they faced the endless Arctic night, or what final thoughts flickered in Andre's mind as the dream he had nurtured for so long collapsed into despair. The Andre Arctic balloon expedition remains suspended between triumph and tragedy, between history and legend. Was it an extraordinary attempt that simply fell victim to the merciless realities of the Arctic? Or was it something more, a cautionary tale of ambition cursed by forces beyond human control? As the wind still howls across White Island, sweeping over the frozen remains of their final camp, we are left to wonder, what truly happened in those last silent days of 1897? And what, if anything, still lies hidden beneath the shifting ice, waiting to emerge and tell the rest of the story?